What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Upsurge podcast. My name is William Chillingwalk Moore, and today I'm joined here by one of the people I've already met from before, Mr. Dan Clerke. Is that how you pronounce your last name, Dan? Just want to make
It's
sure.
actually Clark. It's just spelled stupid.
Clark.
So when I grew up with substitute teachers and they said Dan Clerke, I just kind of was like, all right, yeah, that's my name now.
All right. Well, if you guys, of course, if you don't know Dan, he is the director of the Maryville University squad. Of course, one of the, I think, probably top tier, I think at this point, esports programs that have been developing and nurturing League of Legends talent for quite a while now. I think Overwatch, you guys are pretty up there too, right, Dan? For
Yep.
Overwatch as well. So yeah, Maryville, you guys are running a tight ship at Maryville, and yeah, glad to have you on the podcast, bro.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. I know after this I'm gonna kick your butt and smash. So we can...
I'm training, man. I have to be number one in the collegiate director's PR. I have to do that.
Well, who's better than you right now?
I think Greg at UTD is better than me.
Oh,
and I don't think many other people are actually. The ceiling's pretty low. The ceiling's pretty low. Put me up against Doc Haskell. I'm not scared of Doc Haskell. It's
okay. Then what about Chu from St. Louis University?
Chu's good, but he's been lazy lately, so I've caught up to him.
Oh, damn, Chu. All right, well, Chu, if you watch this podcast, bro, you gotta get better, man. Come on, you already have Clerke running over Missouri. That's not good.
I can beat his heavies, but then he started picking up Link. His Link's a little tough, but I think I got it. Okay, I think I got it down. Right.
Okay. Well, of course, Clerke, we've already been acquainted from each other since UFest, and we've already been chilling for quite a bit here. But the biggest thing, I think, and also just to have a conversation between you and I never actually got to know a little bit about your story and how you actually got into esports. So before we get into like the entire conversation of like amateur and collegiate and all that stuff here, tell us a little bit about your past, man. How you got started in Enemy and everything else, bro.
So I grew up playing hockey. My dad was my coach growing up. I played Call of Duty and Quake competitively at the same time. Then I decided to follow my friends to college to engineering school instead of like doing what I should have been doing, which was business. I took engineering classes in high school, made the mistake of like just following where my friends went. Hated biomedical engineering. And then one night we were watching, like every night I would just play Smash with people on my floor and like Melee and stuff. We would watch LCS and stuff. And one night I walked up to my friend, Robert Stemler, is known as Chachi. And I was like, yo, let's drop out tomorrow and let's start an esports org. I was like making logos at the time for like game battles teams, and I made the Enemy logo. And I was sitting there and I was like, oh my god, what should this little like devil thing be called? And I was thinking of like acronyms like STL, like when you're watching sports and stuff. And I was like, oh, Enemy, NME. That's genius. We have to start an esports org. We have to just go all in. So we dropped out. I picked up a job at a deli. And then I enrolled at Maryville to work on a business degree to try to help with it. We sent our first team to LAN. It was a Call of Duty team. We sent them out to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. They beat Envy at the tournament. It featured names like Colchan and Facento. Facento went on to be the coach at my E-United team that just won the World Championship with us. So that was kind of a cool like full circle thing. He was on my first ever like esports team. We then decided let's go for LCS. We made LCS, and then the rest is kind of history from there, right?
I guess, man. I can't believe, I think the more I think about how you got into it, the more it makes sense. It's still surprising that like you got into esports just be like, hey, yo, bro, what if we just like dropped out and made esports team?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Like back then there was like no big money in it. Like we could fund the org out of our own pockets. Can't do that anymore, obviously, with how expensive it is to get in. You gotta buy in if you want to get into League of Legends. And like, I mean, the LA scene back then was just such a party scene. Like literally all you had to do is just apply a little bit of like traditional sports coaching. Like I learned a lot from my dad growing up, and like that's really all it took. I mean, the barrier to entry, like I've learned a lot. I've learned a ton over the last 7-8 years doing this. Anybody who knows me back then, my Twitter looked very different back then. I was a very different person. I was extremely immature. I was in my very early 20s, and I was in LCS. I was a cocky kid. But yeah, like I always tell people like when they ask like how I got into it, I always tell them like, to be honest, like, I got really lucky. Like I was
Mhm.
super lucky. I came in like at the perfect time. I think Enemy. Trying to think of what would be like a comparable team. Maybe Splice, which is now like Defiant.
Yeah. Mhm.
They were like graduating class of orgs was like the last group of orgs that was able to kind of get in before the big wave of money came. And I
Yeah.
mean, some people within the industry blame me for that because remember I got the $1.2 million for my LCS team from
Mhm.
Martin Shkreli back before he got
Mhm.
arrested.
Yeah.
And then immediately after that, Immortals came in with Noah Winston with their big investment. So a lot of people
Mhm.
attribute like the influx of money in like the bubble to like that offer. So I don't
Dang it,
know.
Dan.
Maybe I killed
You ruined
esports.
it.
We'll see.
You killed amateur graduation to
I
pro,
killed
but what you
everything,
doing?
dude.
Maybe. But speaking of actually starting esports org from all that learning then, and also being kind of like the leader of the enemy squad, what were the biggest takeaways and what are the biggest learning lessons from your time with enemy?
Oh, I like to say that I learned everything about failure in enemy. Like I learned how to fail and
Mm,
I learned how to learn from failure. I mean, we had a lot of wins in enemy. Like we got an LCS, like
mhm,
just a group of kids got an LCS. It was like a big deal. We beat out Fusion, who spent high six figures on their team, and we spent
mhm,
like 60, 70 grand on that roster.
mhm,
Um, I learned how to scout talent. I learned like once we got into LCS, like just how different it was in that environment than it was in Challenger.
mhm,
And I think that that was super important, which is kind of framing everything moving forward for me, especially like it also caused me to grow up really fast. I was not the best leader back then. I was not the best CEO, and I
mhm,
learned a lot of stuff. And like I learned from every year of kids I haven't married, but I learned more and more.
mhm,
Like I'm still improving. I'm not by any
mhm,
means like some form of like god tier manager or anything. Like we're all learning. That's like the beauty of
mhm.
esports right now. We're all like in our mid 20s, early
Yeah.
30s, and we're all
Yeah.
learning. Um,
Mhm,
but yeah, like enemy specific stuff. I don't know. I would say like the best way to describe it was I just learned a lot through our failures, and there's a lot of things that if I went back today, I would do differently.
mhm,
Um, Especially now that I've become more business minded. I remember like I was really leaning on the whole thing. Like when we turned down that offer,
mhm,
I was really leaning into my players made the spot. I don't want to sell the team and then them not get to play in
mhm,
LCS.
mhm,
But now that I understand like the revenue model of the industry more, like I would have
mhm,
may probably taken that offer back then. It's nice for me to say that um, that I wouldn't have taken the offer so that my kids could play in LCS. But
mhm,
me today, if I were to like just truthfully go back, I'd probably have taken that offer and just let the
mhm,
company function for another year or so with that runway. But
mhm.
there's a lot of stuff. I mean, we could go on about the enemy days for hours, you know.
Yeah, for sure. But now going from enemy, this is where you had that window where you start transitioning into United and all of that. I think there was like a buyout. Is that correct or something, or kind of like
No,
or what was the transition of that? Yeah.
so enemy ran out of money. This was like right after we had like the Kusta Counter Strike roster. When
Yeah.
Kusta
Yeah. I remember.
went off to Liquid after.
Mhm,
We ran out of money. We decided to call it. This is right around the time that kind of Maryville started as well. So kind
Yeah.
of
Mhm,
I'll go through the Maryville story. So towards like the last couple months of enemy, um, actually no, I had gotten the offer. I went to my counselor at Maryville about the offer because when I went to my parents about it, they didn't believe me.
mhm,
So I went to my counselor and I was like, I just got this $1.2 million off team. I don't know what to do. My parents think I'm lying.
mhm,
What do you have any advice for this situation?
mhm,
And they had me in the president's office the next day. The president of Maryville asked, "Okay, so what do we got to do to get this on campus?"
mhm,
my president's super forward thinking. He likes to
mhm,
like kind of lean into whatever his students are working on,
mhm,
and I think he saw this as like an interesting project. I had turned him down initially because I was super cocky. Like I said, we just made LCS. I was like in my early 20s. But then
yeah.
after we got relegated and enemy was kind of like
Mhm,
on its last legs, there's
mhm,
one story that kind of stands out as to like why I went back to my president and said I was down to do it. We had
mhm,
a kid on my LCS team, um, Otter. I'll just say it. I
yeah.
say the story a
Mhm,
lot, but
mhm.
Otter knows I love him. So when I tell the story and I might get some of it wrong, I apologize. Clarify it on Twitter for me. But Otter dropped out of school to pursue pro. He had been couch surfing and living with friends for 3 or 4 years, trying to pursue the dream of LCS, and he made it with my team. And like I saw when we made LCS, just like the amount of like the previous 4 years struggles and stress just lifted off of him, and just like an outpour of like emotion. I'd never seen something like that on anybody's face in my entire life. I've been pretty sheltered, honestly. And then we got relegated, and I saw the exact opposite, where he was worried about going back to square one. And so that's what really put the concept of Maryville into perspective for me. So I agreed to start Maryville under the pretense that it was going to be a place where I would only give out life-changing scholarships, where we would provide security while kids either wanted to educate their parents to esports, because it's a lot easier for parents to swallow when you're able to say, hey, I have a full ride for this, than if you don't, than if you're just like going into amateur with no pay and you're taking a gap year, as well as maybe like a backup plan for kids that like tried their time in LCS and wanted to like, they didn't like back then when we started Maryville, like the salaries weren't the millions of dollars that they are today either. So it was a place where you could have a backup plan when it didn't work out or something, you could come to school. So that's kind of like Otter was honestly the reason why I agreed to start the Maryville program. So I went back to the president. I said, give me 5 full rides, I'll bring you an undefeated national championship. My president, like where he tells the story all the time too, he word for word, he says, I didn't know 2 out of every 3 words he says when he was talking about esports. But when he said that he would bring me a national championship, I said, all right, you're on. Let's do this. He just wanted to see if I could do it. And we did it that first year, because we were the only school that was giving scholarships like that. And from that year on, like he's given us anything that we really need usually. I mean, he'll help me fundraise. But we've kind of hit all the goals that we've set. So the president always jokes, and he says things like, Dan's the only guy on this campus that does what he says he's going to do. Like that.
So, at this point.
So then after that, Chris Shim, who was in the LCS same time as me, TDK, the United owner, Adam Stein, originally was talking about buying TIP, which was an LCS at that time. They decided against it. And Chris connected me with Adam and recommended me to Adam, saying that if you want to start an organization, start with this guy. I talked to Adam and James DeKino, the 2 owners at the time, who are based out in LA. I started consulting for them for like a couple months, and then I went full time with them. So around the same time that Maryville launched, United also launched, and it was less of a buyout of Enemy, and it was more of a let's start over, let's import the Smite team. You can take whatever teams you want with it, and let's just go fresh. Now, these are really long answers, because these are like, this is like kind of like historical stuff, so I apologize.
No, that's why it's a podcast, right? I like hearing all these long answers. And like, if a podcast is boring, if it's short answers, let's be honest, man.
Right.
Yeah. So I appreciate. As actually now knowing more about you, now getting to know you, and also knowing like how you got into it. That's actually really cool that you actually started like Maryville and just Collegiate off of a player that you see go through the grind, and. I know a lot of players like that. I know, Quentin or Shoryu, who's now playing in Academy. He has gone through some of that kind of struggle too. Trying to go pro, and you definitely have those players. I mean, you hear those kind of Cinderella stories all the time in traditional sports too, and having that kind of pathway for collegiate esports is always a good thing here. Now I know why you started Maryville, and I think it's a really good way of why you got into it. But along with that, that's where we got now again to Collegiate now, right? We're looking at the collegiate atmosphere, because I think Maryville, you guys have been dominating for how many years now?
I mean, we actually got DQ'd our first ever year of CLOL, because we tried to play prototype. Like, I think the qualifiers were like a week before spring semester started, so he technically wasn't a student, because he had like 2 weeks or something before he started attending. But we were like, all right, we only have 4 players, so we got DQ'd year 1, and we had to win DreamHack, which was the CSL league. But every year after that, I think we've only not won once, which was the year we lost to Illinois. But yeah, we've won 2 national titles, won an ACE championship, won. I think we have every HuFest trophy in our lab, honestly. Like we're doing well. We've placed second at the world championship 3 times. Those Chinese schools, man,
There's something else.
it's like the Soviets in the 80s in hockey, man. They're unbeatable. And they yell at you when you play them too in Mandarin. So you don't know what they're saying, but you're like, these guys are being mean, man.
They're talking smack about you. Be like, man, they up here, they ain't all that. But speaking of that, Maryville, of course, has been one of the big teams in Collegiate that has also been a part of the amateur scene too. And I want to ask, as a director, in your perspective, how you make it successful from kind of blending the two together the best. Because I know a lot of collegiate programs, they can't blend it well, right? Like, or if they try to, they're still not able to compete at a middle or high level against the amateur squads. And I want to ask how you as a director make that happen.
Well, it starts with our staff. I think myself and Tanner both have pro experience, so we have a lot of perspective when it comes to like what's important at this level. The other part of it is just our program is designed in a way to where our priority isn't necessarily to win CLL. Obviously, if my school heard me say that, they might not like that. But our priority as a school is to like work with our students individually. So like the way that our program's set up is like, I don't want to ever have a situation where I have 130 kids on scholarship. I want to have 20 to 30 max, and I want them to be on heavy scholarship instead of like a bunch of smaller scholarships, because I want to be able to focus on the players individually. I want my coaching staff to actually have the time to make a difference in whatever the goals are for whoever we have at the time. So our goal is specifically to show that within the collegiate ecosystem, we can send players to professional leagues, whether it's in League of Legends or Overwatch or whatever it is. Our Overwatch program is a little bit less developed than our League of Legends program, but I think this past year we've kind of shown that we kind of have some fruits to our labor with Niles and Iconic. I'm not going to claim that we did that all on our own, because they're obviously two very talented individuals, but I think it's the start of kind of what's to come. I have very specific kind of opinions about amateur and everything. My problem with North American League of Legends right now is it feels to me like this is gonna be not a long answer. I apologize.
Yeah, you can take your time, bro. Take your time.
So I come from pro. The pro scene, the revenue model, making the business of esports work at the pro level is very difficult. It's a very, very difficult business. You are spending a ton of money. There's not a lot of revenue streams. In traditional sports, you have butts and seats, you have concessions, you're selling tickets, you can sell physical sponsorship, you have an actual large-scale arena, and there's a lot of things, including media rights and a ton of other revenue sources that create a revenue floor. So if I'm a basketball team, I go into the season knowing I can expect these revenues, even if it's a bad year. Like this is a floor of revenue that I know is coming. None of that shit exists in pro esport. I'm also gonna curse because this is where I'm getting passionate about this stuff. But none of this exists in pro esports. The revenue model is hard. It's a very, very hard business. That's why you see a lot of companies leveraging content, leveraging apparel, things that aren't like mechanically esports, because you need those things to fill the gaps. A lot of these other pro teams are also creating umbrella companies. Gen G's running a collegiate platform where they sell programs because they're trying to fill the gaps of revenue that the pro team leaves. They're diversifying that. When you go down to the amateur level, that business model is infinitely harder, because outside of the top 3 teams, sponsors are smart enough to know that we're going to go after influencers if we want to target a demographic more so than teams, and we're more likely to go for cash sponsorships for influencers than teams. Even in the pro ecosystem, that's true outside of like the top 4 teams. So outside of like the top 4 or 5 teams, everyone else is kind of fighting for scraps for the most part. Amateur level, you're fighting for less than breadcrumbs. Like you're fighting for like the grains of salt that were left on the table that you accidentally shook, not on the plate. Like there's nothing there. So when I see like teams going out there and spending like 6-7K a month on salaries, like you must just be trying to have fun with that money, because you're not making money on that. It's not happening. So that's my problem, is because if you're not able to run sustainable business, you're not able to pay staff full-time wages, so that they can focus on actually being staff members. Staff members and amateur, like whether they want to say it's out of the goodness of their heart or what that they're doing this, like they all want this to be a job. That's their goal. Yeah. And if they're grinding for $100 paycheck every month or trying to find how to make a little bit of extra money on the side, they're not putting everything they possibly can into their players or into their craft or learning. A lot of these teams, like even like they'll just put 5 kids in the Discord and then claim that they made those players. Like, no, you just put 5 kids in the Discord and you put a logo on Twitter and now you're a team. Like that's all you really did. The reason why I think collegiate's important is because I think that it can fill the gap that amateur leaves in terms of sustainability. I don't think that collegiate is the path to pro. I think it can be another option for the path to pro. But I think in terms of infrastructure, like schools have very different kind of wants and needs from amateur endemic companies. Like they don't need to mechanically drive revenue through the school through traditional esports mediums, whether that's prize money, sponsorships, whatever. You can have incoming students as a metric. You can have increase in student engagement as a metric. There are other things that schools quantify as valuable outside of the actual standard business of esports, and schools can pay livable wages to staff members. Whether that's 30 to 50K right now, like that, you can have whatever opinion you want, but that's better than zero, right?
Yeah.
And at the high end, you'll have coaches making close to 6 figures. Like this is and you're giving, like the players aren't. A lot of players in amateur are foregoing education for $0 to $500. Not a sustainable thing. I mean, you can compare that to baseball. Like in baseball, they kind of do the same thing, but I think that it's a lot safer, especially when pro players aren't making baseball salaries. Unless your perk's making a shitload of money and you're the outlier, you're not making that much money. You're not making making money out of esports. So I think the ability to give kids a degree, either heavily discounted or for free, is a healthier thing for the ecosystem. And I think that schools being willing to inject capital into the space makes collegiate a healthier path for this at the moment. We can't sit here as amateur and collegiate and ask for Big Daddy Riot to pay for everything for us. We can't ask for Riot to sit here. They don't have infinite marketing dollars. They can't sit there and make the whole scene tenable for all these organizations that are paying salaries. Like, at some point, it needs to come from external sources, and I think colleges are the most willing to do it currently. That can kind of put in meaningful infrastructure, get all the players in the same place on the same campus, provide scholarships, provide livable salaries for staff. That's kind of my long form answer. I don't even remember what the initial question is, but this is what happens. This is what happens when you start talking about collegiate. I'll just start going on some tangents. Some tangential bullshit. That's why my Twitter is so. That's why my Twitter is so like illegible. But
perfectly fine. Dan, you good. But speaking of that, though, speaking of collegiate, right? Because you talked about like what collegiate, how you want to set up collegiate to make it be the better ecosystem compared to amateur, and make it have just a safer way to kind of nurture people and how they want to progress in their life. That's where a lot of schools are, starting up collegiate programs, first, second year, all these things. But then a lot of these collegiate programs tend to fail in a sense where they're not getting good coverage of their players, or they're not getting good players overall, or they're not able to tell the kind of stories that they want to cover about these players and everything else. And that's where I want to ask you, like, your opinion as a director, what schools should be doing if they want to have a collegiate program and be a little bit better compared to, I think right now, where a lot of collegiate teams aren't as good. We hear a lot of schools that give scholarships, but then sometimes it's very little. They only cover maybe 10 to 20% of their scholarship, and then that's their esports program. But then they have an arena, but then no one really knows what they do. Like, what would you recommend as a director to other schools on how well they can just kind of progress?
All right, this is gonna be another long answer.
You can give as long as an answer you want, Dan. I don't care.
So this is a result of just like a really, really bad hiring gap that exists right now. Like, if I'm being honest, my dad could walk into a college down the road and say Soraka, Trindamir, Ezreal, and get hired as a esports director right now.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
I'm not trying to flame other directors in the space, but like, when you're a director of an esports program, you have to, one, be competitively literate. And what I mean by that is like literate in the sense of being able to win. being able to put together a staff and a roster that's able to win. But you also need to be a literate administrator in the sense that you need to be able to go out and raise money. When I ask my president for money, he doesn't just write a check and be like, yeah, sure, Dan, here you go. He says, okay, I'll give you this many scholarships, and then you have to raise this many scholarships. Or if I want to, we're working on a 17,000 square foot facility right now. My president and I are going out and fundraising that money. Too many times I hear a director complaining about what their budget is, and I don't see directors going out and fundraising their own budget. It's really not that hard. Like if you're an SEC school, or if you're a school that has 15,000 kids in it, your alumni pool is probably over 100,000 people. You should be able to go raise money. And if you don't have access to the alumni pool, then you should be able to talk the language of your administrators to get that done. I don't think that the vast majority of schools in America are unreasonable to the extent where they're just unwilling to work with a program. If they're willing enough to have an esports program and the esports program isn't being built the proper way, they've been led the wrong way into building that esports program. They've been misled. Their expectations have been set in a way to make them unwilling to expand correctly. I think that there is a clear hiring gap in collegiate. I think that the definition of esports in collegiate is muddy in the sense that I think a lot of these programs out here that are just a closet with 6 computers in it or aren't competitively viable, and then so they just focus on the club aspect of it. That's not esports. That's a gaming club. I think that the definition of esports is important moving forward as well, because when you say esports to me, I think Quake, I think Call of Duty, I think I'm putting my 5 best League of Legends players into a match against your 5 best League of Legends players. I'm not thinking I'm going to put my kid that happens to go to school here and likes Counter-Strike on a team and
call it a day.
Call it a day. No, I'm here to win. Like this is we're gonna train kids. Like this is football. This is soccer. And I think that that's super dangerous too, because we're at real risk of like this being defined within the collegiate ecosystem closer to badminton than it is to football. Which is I want this to be March Madness. I want this to be football. I don't want this to be like some tier 3 activity like dodgeball or badminton or something.
Intramurals.
And so I think that it starts with we need associations to do a better job of actually educating schools as to what a good program is, as to what an esports program is, and as to what a gaming program is. I think that just lumping the two together is irresponsible, and I think that we need more people from pro coming down and kind of handling the esports stuff, and then learning how to be administrators. I think that there's great administrative directors out there. I think there's great esports directors out there. I don't think that there's many that are both. So I think with your question about scholarships and all that stuff, I think that it just kind of trickles down from that kind of meta issue. And I'm not saying that collegiate is some like overly developed great thing that can replace amateur as is. I just think that like at a couple schools, there's a situation that exists that's better than a lot of the amateur programs. And I think that with the right people involved, it can accelerate past amateur quickly. It's just a lot of these things are going to be solved with time. We need better hires. We need hires to be placed at institutions that are willing to invest in those hires. And
So this is where I was also talking about talking with some directors too about not only opening scholarships for the players themselves, but also opening scholarships for student coaches or for student managers or for student on-air talent, right? What do you think, as a director yourself, what do you think that avenue could be when it comes to being able to kind of market your team a little bit better, or being able to kind of draw on that kind of talent pool from amateur, right? Because I know there's a lot of amateur managers, amateur coaches who do want to pursue a degree, but then if they go to their local college and be a coach there, it's nowhere close to coaching 5 challenger players. What do you think collegiate programs will start expanding in that way as well?
I think that's kind of risky. I mean, I've tried to do that in the past. Obviously, when we had Sojin, who went on to coach CLG, he was a student coach. But the problem that's existed when I've tried to do student coaches is when it comes to them being a figure of authority over the players, that is very hard, because if a player isn't going to class, if a player isn't performing in the game, if a player isn't getting great grades, another student can't sit there and say, okay, you're not going to get your scholarship next year. You know what I mean?
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't really have another student be an authority figure over another student. So that's where that's hard. I think that there needs to be a clear division of staff when the staff's an authority figure. I think you can have analysts that are students. I just don't think you can have coaches. I don't think you can have really student directors, because that's tough. That's a tough thing. Otherwise, even if you have it set up to where the director is going to the AD and then the AD is handling all the administrative stuff, the students are still going to see that guy as another student, as a peer, and that's gonna be that's a tough dynamic. But when
Okay.
it comes to like on-air talent, analysts, stuff like that, I think that that's great. I would love to give more scholarships to people like that. We have a participation scholarship for our club, but it's our club scholarship. It's not our varsity program scholarship that we give to our players. It's $2,000 for club members. We have one of our analysts teach on that currently. But yeah, no, I think that schools can develop towards that. I just think that when you're talking about positions of authority, like just inherent authority, like management and coaching, that's kind of sketch.
Okay. And then along with that, you also mentioned where in traditional sports you have other pieces of revenue where people can show up and watch the games live, and all these other different ways of generating revenue here. For collegiate as well, I've always wondered this. Where I've always been wondering this, if collegiate programs can do this, where you build kind of like what I think what Boise is doing, right? They have like entire production team, and they have all their 5 players play on stage in a sense. But of course it's over online, and they have like a place where people can pay and sit and watch. Do you ever think that's could potentially be a way for collegiate esports to kind of develop, or if not, that have collegiate teams travel back and forth as in traditional sports?
If a collegiate program built out a production team and
Mm-hmm.
then white labeled that, and then used it as a revenue source for the institution, where they went out and they found tournaments that wanted production, that had
Mm-hmm.
capital behind them, that wanted to do, let's say this was a COVID production, you
Mm-hmm.
could easily charge anywhere from 15 to 25 grand for a weekend tournament, and that can be a source of revenue for the
Mm-hmm.
program. If let's say Boise leveled that up even further and said
Mm-hmm.
that we could produce live events, and they
Yeah.
put like an 18-wheeler together and put together like a
Yeah.
traveling show, and then they
Mm-hmm.
went down to SoCal and hosted an event for, let's say, UCLA or some group
Mm-hmm.
out like Riot for First Strike or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You could charge anywhere from 60 to 80 grand for that. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of ways that you can kind of create revenue from the school through the program, while bringing tactile learning experiences to the students.
Mm-hmm.
The same can be said for your own events, your own facilities. Like, one of the things that we're doing is um, we're looking to build a 17,000 square foot facility, with the intent of it being community facing. So
Mm-hmm.
my next step I've been focusing on, especially during COVID, is talking to the public high school districts here in town on how we can get some form of mass adoption. I've
Mm-hmm.
helped build 2 or 3 private school programs where they have 50, 70 computers in a lab there.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with the public high schools is they can't afford the
Yeah.
startup costs for the tech, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't afford the permanent space on their campus, because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of those schools a lot of the time are pretty overflowing with students.
Yeah.
Um, so the solution I thought of was like, kind of, I come from hockey, so comparing it to hockey, where my parents paid a fee to the program every year for me to
Mm-hmm.
play, and then the pool of that fee is used to pay for ice time for our practices and our games
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. I was thinking about building a place where we can host high school events, like a state championship, like a regional championship, like weekly matches, their league matches, but then also being able to have private rooms that full rent, like ice rink time, for these high
Mm-hmm.
schools to come in and lower the upfront cost for the school, and then allowing
Mm-hmm.
the kids to have access to high-end computers, a high-end practice environment, maybe integrating some of my league players to help coach their league teams or their Overwatch
Mm-hmm.
teams, things like that. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of think about this long term and grow that revenue model.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of ways to do this that I don't think a lot of directors are thinking of. And then the other thing is, it's like, just donations, man. Like, pick up the
Yeah.
phone and call people. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
hard, man.
Kind of get your hands dirty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I definitely understand that. That's cool. I never really thought about that as a way of looking at the collegiate program as generating revenue and
And
everything
that's like
else. But
within five
yeah,
seconds of me thinking about you using Boise as an example, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
you can literally sit there with a whiteboard in front of you and think of ways to, like, integrate your program and what it's good at into either your local community or the
Mm-hmm.
industry as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. That'd be pretty cool. And I think that's the reason why I bring that up too is because I know like a lot of collegiate programs, are unable to grab like the top players, right? Honestly, a lot of collegiate programs are unable to pick up like a high challenger squad like you at Maryville or even like some other school to try and compete. And that's why I always ask like what other schools can do when it comes to being a part of the esports atmosphere if you're trying to generate a program. Here at Bethany, with Doa joining onto the squad, Bethany, of course, we have a solid roster. I think a lot of the teams in the
Yeah,
North
you guys do.
Conference would agree. We have a pretty solid roster. I think top three, top four in the North Conference, and in the nation, maybe top 10, somewhere around there, right? But then, for the program at Bethany, our focus is actually on production. Just because Doa's going to be there, Doa's looking to integrate and generate on-air talent, which is the biggest thing, to be able to tell these stories. And that's why I was always wondering what collegiate programs should be looking to do outside of just winning. Because you're trying to win, you have to compete
Really
against
just
Maryville.
identifying what you're good at,
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah.
if you're like my president, I don't know if you've watched Hulu lately or
Mhm.
national TV, but you'll see a
Mhm.
Maryville ad probably randomly every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's because my president wants the big red M as many places as possible. So if you go to a Blues game in town, Maryville's presenting the starting lineup. At the
Yeah.
Cardinals game, Maryville's presenting who's next at bat. So when it
Mhm.
comes to the esports, he's like, all right, I just want to win. I want to be
Yeah.
holding the trophy. I want the big red M everywhere. And that's what my president wants.
Mhm.
Maybe another school wants to be good at production. Maybe another school wants to run a really tight ship and increase student engagement through club initiatives / intramurals.
Yeah.
It really just comes down. That's what I'm saying. Like, these schools have more wants more diverse wants and needs than traditional ecosystems like amateur and stuff like that. It's really just they come in many different shapes and sizes, and I think that if you want to win, you have to get the staff to get the players there. You have to have the scholarships to get the players there. I've had plenty of offers to go to Division 1 high end schools, like academically, and they want to import my program, but they aren't willing to give full tuition to players.
Yeah.
Even though let's say they offer me an increase in salary from what I'm currently making, and I sit there and I say no, because I can't run the program the same way I'm running it here. I won't have the same access to my president. I can pick up the phone and call my president after this meeting if we wanted to. I can call the AD. I would never have that access at a top school. So I think that, like, if you want to win, you have to understand that the school has to be bought in and willing to be nimble, in a sense that you can run it kind of like an amateur program or like a pro team, where you have to make split-second decisions, and it doesn't have to go through 3 weeks of red tape to get it decided on.
That's esports in general. It doesn't act like a traditional sport, like a D1 team, and I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you want to be like a Boise State or a Bethany, where you're focused on digital media, like, maybe your goals are different. Maybe you do come up with some form of like Bethany white label consulting thing where you provide production for high school orgs or pro or like developers that are trying to run tournaments. I don't know. It's really just whatever. You have to figure out what the administration defines as valuable to the institution.
Yeah. Okay. And then since we're talking about administration and everything else there, how do you handle the hiring process? And that's one of the biggest things I think administration needs to know, but also with that, directors who needs to know how you handle picking up solid staff, right? Because you picked up Exogen, as you said, as a student coach, and now you have Zoo, who's a full-time coach at Maryville, and how you can kind of weed out those good coaches and figuring out who's qualified to be around your staff.
So, I mean, same goes for players. I've worked in professional for 8 years, so I kind of have an idea of who's around, whose contracts are coming up at the end of the year, who's available, what they would potentially be looking for. So if, like, let's say my president allowed me to get an Overwatch coach in fall, and it gave me a budget, I'd kind of have a short list just in my head of who I'd be looking at already. So I don't really need to go around and do a ton of interviewing, maybe a little bit. But when it comes to my administration understands that when it comes to the admin stuff, I'll handle it. Cat God will handle it, my assistant director. When it comes to coaching, they're just coaching. A lot of these schools require like master's degrees or undergrad degrees to be a League of Legends coach. I think that that's an okay thing to ask for if you're in higher education institution for your hires. But I think that the admin within that program, that's the only person that should be held to that standard. I think the director should be held to that standard. But when it comes to a coach, if you're hiring someone to coach, they should just be qualified as a coach, and that's all that's really necessary. And then they can learn to be an admin over time, or you can give them a couple classes for free a semester to get the degree over time. But if I tell my school I need to hire this coach, if I need to hire Tanner Zoo, which is what happened a couple years ago, Sojin went to CLG. We were kind of on an island. The following spring, our team was in the decline, and we really needed to turn it around quick. I said, I let him know who Tanner was. I let him know his qualifications. I said he's a great coach. We need to get him in. School followed my lead on that. They weren't overly involved in the hiring process. If a hire doesn't turn out, if someone shows up to school and I don't know, smokes a bunch of weed on campus and gets fired, then that falls on me. It doesn't fall on that guy. That guy gets fired. It falls on me for hiring that guy. And the school kind of understands that that's how the dynamic works.
So then why do schools tend to look at like coaching staff essentially to require degrees instead of just looking at pure qualifications? Because
I think those administrators are too involved in the esports process. I think that those athletic directors are too involved in the esports process. I think that like it really comes down to like the initial education of the administrators as to how esports works and what the expectations are. I think at the end of the day, like if you're at a school that is all about my football and my basketball, and you tell the AD that he's now got to worry about esports, he'll be like, "God damn it, I don't want to talk about video games. I don't care about this shit." He would much rather have a program that's self-sustaining, where he has like a staff member that he can trust that will make the right decision. And you just say, "Can you okay this for me?" And then he says, "Okay, great. I trust that the staff member is making the right decision." And then we're good. I just don't, like I said, I think that there's a hiring gap. I think the expectations aren't set properly for some of these administrators. And I think that they might be too traditional in the sense that they're modeling it too closely to some of their other programs that already are existing on campus. So I think that unless you have an administration that is super willing to learn and is willing to take esports seminars for 10 straight weeks and really learn the ins and outs of the industry, the administration really, there should be like a degree of separation. I almost completely insulate all the administrative stuff from my staff. So to Tanner, my League of Legends coach, his world is just those 10 players and then winning championships, getting their grades, getting them to get good grades, and in between semesters, recruitment and dealing with some of the applications sometimes. All of the other administrative stuff, I am a complete buffer from my staff from. So to him, outside of the schools, like such stupid, outside of the school part of it, it's literally just running an amateur or a pro team for him.
Yeah.
For me, I'm the one worrying about like the facility fees. I'm the one worrying about the money in, money out. I'm the one worrying about like even if it gets to the point where one of our players are struggling with grades, I'm the one worrying about how to get that kid's grades up a lot of the times. I mean, he might have some policies where if a kid's struggling with grades, you're not practicing, but you're showing up to practice and you're doing your homework in the lab. He might have some policies like that. But when it comes down to, if it gets to a point where I have to involve the AD and we're like, hey, this kid's really struggling. We're at risk of him not coming back in August, but I really want him to come back. How can we fix this? He's completely insulated.
I think that's a really good approach personally. I think that's probably the best way to kind of approach it. The more I think about it, knowing that I used to coach too, where I was a student coach, right? And I didn't really think about the authority that you mentioned, where because I'm a student, I'm a peer, then that authority is kind of compromised, right?
That's that's what I would say would be the biggest thing that I've learned since starting Maryville, for me especially, is when I GM'd Enemy and towards the beginning when I GM'd United, I got way too close with my players.
Yeah.
Played Smash every day with my players, went out to eat with them, and United shared some drinks with my players, things like that. To some extent, Maryville, same thing, hung out with my players all the time. Over the years, I've understood that like one of the keys to being a good GM or a good manager is knowing when to be around. Yeah. Like you need to create some form of separation between you and the players, because there needs to be some form of ceiling of authority. If the players see all of their staff members as peers, there's no ceiling of authority that exists for a group. And it's really, really hard to kind of keep control of things when things go bad. That's a great system when everything's going great and everybody likes each other and the team's winning and all that stuff. But as soon as something goes wrong and everyone's looking for who's that authority figure that's going to kind of hold the hammer down, and that really doesn't exist, It's tough. That would probably be my biggest lesson is learning when to be around as a manager. You don't always have to be there. You can only come in when it's important. You can check in on your players' well-being individually, but having an authority figure somewhere in the organization that's actually seen as an authority figure is really important.
Okay. All right. Well, honestly, a lot of nice words, a lot of big words for your Collegiate too, Dan. I think I've learned a lot. Honestly, it's just me sitting here and learning a lot about how a collegiate program should be run. I'm taking a collegiate director seminar. Once I graduate, I'll be a director somewhere soon.
Yeah, just play more Smash with me, and I'll answer whatever questions you need while you train me.
Man, I got you, bro. I'll teach you more about how to beat Terry too. But Dan, we've been talking for quite a while, man. I just want to ask if you have any other questions for me, or any questions in regards to, or anything you want to talk about when it comes to the collegiate space and what we can do to improve, whether in here or in amateur.
I don't know if you have any opinions about what I've said so far, and then we can kind of wrap it up. No?
I mean, I think
you said no.
I personally agree with a lot of what you already said. So I honestly don't really have any like conflicting opinions. You know, this is where like if you were to wonder like how my journey was, right? Because I was a student coach for. I came from the amateur scene, and then I went into the collegiate program as student coach, right? And I never really thought about it that way, where being just a student already makes the authority being compromised, right? I think that's a big thing that I 100% now agree on when we look at coaches and we look at everything else here, but also the hiring process of coaches overall. Because I had to have a degree to be a coach, right? I was someone who, I think back then you could say I was relatively qualified, but then because I didn't have a degree, I had to get a degree, right? And the best way for me to do that is to get a scholarship to be a coach.
100%.
Right? So,
that's the tough thing. It's something that I think will be figured out over time. Maybe it is a situation where Maryville's doing it wrong and everybody does need a degree. But by the time that's figured out, everybody will have a degree. You know, we won't all be 20, 25 years old trying to do that.
Yeah. Exactly. Eventually, I think everyone will get a degree, but then right now, I definitely like that kind of approach personally, especially in these initial stages of esports where there's still an influx of people in amateur, right? There's still an influx of people who don't have a degree yet they are perfectly well qualified to run a broadcast or coach 5 players or make sure those 5 players are up to snuff, because that's all they focus on, and then they don't have to worry about money in their pockets or worry about their side job that they have to do before going to coaching, or they could just sit there like Tanner, and just I coach already, and this is what I love to do, and I get to just focus on my 10 players.
Right, and these are things that like we magically knew at the beginning of this. Like when Maryville first started, I was a student. We learned these things when I was still a student. So these are things that like over the past 5 years of continuing to try to improve the program, we've kind of learned over time.
Yeah, and exactly. I think that if schools want to kind of replicate that, I think they have to kind of follow what Maryville does personally. When it comes to just handling recruitment and generating revenue and everything else, when it comes to winning, it's a little bit different because you guys already got that on lock. I don't know. It's tough to have a team try and compete. You guys have chippies and you guys beat Solifita. I'm being honest. It's pretty tough to be like have a program be like, we made this program to win. I'll be like, y'all see Maryville? Be like, yeah, we could beat that. I'm like, okay.
I'm honestly starting to feel bad about failing my team. That's the most arrogant thing I'm going to say this whole podcast. I'm starting to feel bad about it. Like, we don't do anything that special. It's really just the infrastructure stuff that I think that allows us to get chippies. It allows us to get that type of stuff, but
that's a big thing, though, man.
I'm begging, please. I want like 3 more schools that can like just. I want someone I'm afraid to play, please. I want that. In the next 2 years, I want at least 2 more schools that I'm afraid to play, please. Most arrogant thing I'll say on podcast: no school in City Hall scares me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where we're at right now, I think, and personally, I think it does come to infrastructure because we've seen schools recruit like five excellent players, right? But then either they move to a different school or they just don't like the program at all because of the infrastructure,
Right.
And that's why I think harms collegiate development the most.
Same thing with us though too. Like there's probably 3 to 5 players that you'll find that were here previously that they could potentially say, I learned nothing at Maryville, or those guys were dicks. I didn't like those guys.
Yeah.
But can't please everybody, and I think like we've had some results. Like everybody's learning. It's all just
Yeah.
learning, and I think a lot of these issues will just be solved with time.
For sure.
This isn't football where Nick Saban's been doing this for 30 years. I've been doing this for 8 years, you know? So it's actually kind of scary to think about. Like, most of us have been doing this for 8 to 10 years, and we got billionaires investing $50 million on us for slots. Like, that shit's scary.
Okay, actually, this will be the last question for you, Dan. Now, just moving from League of Legends and everything else in esports here, let's talk about Smash real quick and where you think Smash can be integrated in the collegiate scene, because that's always something I've been wondering and kind of been experimenting on.
Nintendo's pretty hands off. I mean, I guess aside from recently, just the DMCA stuff, but you can kind of do whatever you want. It's a perfect example of where external capital kind of decides where the scene's headed. I've wanted to do this thing because I'm from St. Louis. I'm from a region where nationally, if you're listening to any of the PR people in St. Louis, I apologize, but we're not Tri-State and we're not SoCal and we're not NorCal and we're not Michigan. We're just not. I'm sorry. I've been thinking about like a situation where like I leverage Maryville's ability to give scholarships out. What if I were once this facility is built to run highly produced weekly, and then I brought 4 to 5 top end Smash players on full ride scholarships to compete in the St. Louis area. I bring enough people to where it's worth it for that many people to come to St. Louis for a scholarship, and then they go to my locals every week. Could I make my region a lot stronger just based off the backs of bringing 5 top players here?
Yeah,
that's what I think is possible in collegiate Smash. Is you potentially have the ability to revitalize entire region based on you bringing high level talent to your school. But also, I think like the club aspect where you just have kids on campus that play Smash, you can also compete with that. But I just thought that was interesting, just like that kind of concept for me specifically with the Maryville stuff. What if I were to bring 4 to 5 top end Smash players to Maryville? Maybe I could make the region stronger because we have strong players. But if there was more strong people for them to play, maybe they would grow and maybe even surpass them, right? Because they don't have the ability to go to every major or every super major. So, I don't know. That's what I was thinking about. But I think Smash. I think if I were to pick up 3 other games right now in order, it would be Rocket League, then Smash, then Valorant.
Okay, that'd be cool. I was wondering about it because I was talking when I was at Grandview. I was talking about potentially bringing in like the top 3 players from Minnesota. And the top 3 players in Minnesota were
that'd be sick.
Into Iowa would make Iowa a gigantic freaking powerhouse of the northern Midwest, right?
Yeah.
Because now you have like the 3 top dogs in Iowa versus the 3 top Minnesotans, like back to back to back.
You play a lot of Smash though. Do you think that concept would potentially work? Like, do you think I could potentially make a whole region like better?
I think it can, because if we look at Minnesota, right? If we look at Minnesota, number 1 is obviously Yeti, right? And we look at the rest of the 2, 3, 4, 5, and like the top 10. Like the top 10 of Minnesota can win/take games off the number 2 in Iowa. Like that's like the discrepancy of everything, because Yeti is there and because Yeti is a gigantic powerhouse already. Where because Yeti's there, like number 3, 4, 5, might not compete against the number 1s of each state, but they can easily compete against the number 2s and onwards. And then I think that's where you create a gigantic dynamic of power when you were to inject someone who has a lot of skill into a region, and also change the entire meta of that region overall. Like I've always, while traveling the Midwest and putting myself in Smash, it's interesting because Minnesota, I told you about this, right? Minnesota, we played Ledge Trappy, we play Projectile, and we play like really like, we focus on that. Yeah, we play your game. Whereas we look at Iowa is a Snake, Joker, and they play like pure meta. They play like what's the top characters? We play those. Wisconsin's all rushed down because Comet, the number one Comet, is a Fox player. And because he plays Fox, everything else generates into that. It's really interesting where the moment you figure out who's number 1, a lot of people adopt that person's play style and that person's strategies because they're learning.
So here's another question then. Yeah. So if like let's say in the St. Louis area that facility was built, if I did the same thing but with like let's say League of Legends collegiate tournaments every other week, and my Maryville team entered it, do you think the surrounding schools would be able to get better at League? Do you think localizing games like League of Legends through academics would be able to make regions stronger at the game if there was more competition, like live competition?
You know what? Maybe not initially, but I think it will, right? I think Smash is probably the biggest one. It's very interesting to talk about 5-on-5s though, just because it's an entirely team thing. Potentially. It requires a lot more resources though, because it's
Right.
it's 10 players and a lot more people to compete, and it depends on how big the local populace is. It can if you have I think it definitely can if you have enough local community to support that. But that's why that's I mean that's always why like team esports is always tough. It's really hard to get like 40 people, which is 8 teams to a
Right.
weekly tournament, right? That's
These are
such a tough
these are the
thing.
types of things that I kind of think
Yeah.
about though, because I'm kind of sit up in my bed at night and I think about like, where is this whole industry headed? Like, are there ways to like accelerate growth in certain places? I don't know.
Mhm.
I think of so much useless things throughout the day.
Yeah. For Smash is cool though, because
Yeah.
actually I don't know if you know this, but the number 2 in Minnesota actually went to Iowa and generated Iowa to become what actually made the meta in Iowa. Because the number 1 was Yeti, number 2 was Cineboo, and Cineboo played differently from everyone in Minnesota because he played what was good.
Right.
And when we moved to Iowa, he told everyone in Iowa, play what's good. Why are you playing like dumb characters? Right? And then the moment
Why are
he
you playing
injected
banjo?
yeah, why are you playing dumb characters? And then the moment he leaves, everyone in Iowa and the top 4 are playing meta characters, top tier characters. And you look at Nebraska though, Nebraska has their crazy one tricks. They have their number 2 player is a Little Mac player. The number 2 player is a Sonic player, number 3 is a Little Mac player, number 1's a Youngling player, right? It's a bunch of wacky stuff in Nebraska, but then they create a gigantic upset because of their weird pool.
Is that Skittles?
Skittles. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Skittles from Nebraska. He plays Youngling, and then his older brother plays Villager and Hero, right? So
that's my kind of region.
They play like random one-off things, and that's why it's really cool. I think if you were to approach it that way, I think it'd be really really cool to inject. I think it for sure will nurture a state to become really strong if you bring a bunch of top players to a place,
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else, Clerke?
I think we're good. We could go on for like 7 straight days if you really wanted to. So we should probably cut it.
Good. We probably could. Yeah, we got Smash time. We could continue talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Clerke, where can everyone catch you, bro? Where can people find you and figure out where you're at?
On Twitter, I'm at Clerke. Follow my team though. Follow at Zoo and follow Maryville GG. I'm just the dude that, like, if this was a hockey team, the dude that gets the team the cool sticks every year. They're the guys that actually do it. So follow those guys.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for the podcast episode, Clerke. And for everyone watching, this will be the end of episode 4 of the Upsurge podcast. We'll catch you guys next week with another guest. Peace out, guys.
Yeah.
Oh no,
I'm here. I'm listening.
Eric. Come on. Hey, sorry,
is it
buddy.
doomed?
It's okay. It might be
Okay.
doomed. I think
It
it's
might
doomed.
be doomed.
Oh,
Oh,
damn.
no. There we go.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to UPL here, man. I'm excited. I'm hyped. I'm ready to go as we are live going into our first match here for today, man. Now, before we get into what we got going on, right? Let's go ahead and talk about what's going on within the bracket currently. Let's go talk about it here, guys, because going off the board, going into the Baron bracket, right? We have Revival 2, which we'll be seeing tomorrow. These guys have been on an absolute tear through every single match they've played, and not only in the Upsurge League, they're also, they're also on the other end of going throughout Big and Cup as well. Just a top contender. I gotta say,
They're tearing it up. They're
Yeah.
tearing it up, right? They got over to finals in Big, and doing in Cup, they were able to I don't want to say beat down. I know you're here right now, but they took a really big win versus Cloud9 Amateur.
They did. That was honestly a really impressive game from them. I think since they beat Maryville, though, Revival really showed that they were kind of the real deal. Placing 6th in RISM kind of made them seem like, they'll consistently place top 8. But them making 2nd in Big, beating some pretty well-known teams so far in Cup, obviously is starting to look really good for them. Top of their group. Chances are it's going to stay that way after tomorrow's game, but we're going to have to see.
I mean, yeah, like you all mentioned, right? It's like they pulled off some absolutely massive upsets too, and we're likely to do that tomorrow, considering they've only dropped one game, which has been so much surprising. But considering how many games they play, I remember talking to many of the coaches too. They have such a busy schedule overall, and preparation is one thing that they definitely hail to be their bread and butter. So they have time to prep, they have time to win. So hopefully tomorrow they've had time to prep for their matches. But going forward right now, we're not here to talk about them necessarily. The match they've got coming on tonight will be ISU versus Striking Vipers. Now, these teams are on very different opposite spectrums of their own two brackets. Right now, ISU, top of the game. They've only dropped one map, which has been the Supernova on the other end. Striking Vipers are not having, fortunately, the hottest time, only unfortunately being able to get only one map, like only 1 point out of every single best 3 they played so far, which is up against Windstrom last week. And I remember you and I even saw the week 1 as well.
Yeah, ISU, or actually rather Striking Vipers. I wasn't on that broadcast, but definitely saw they are struggling, to say the least. Bottom of the bracket, 1-6, I believe, if you saw on the screen. Yeah. So I think the thing from what you actually got from talking to the people who are working over at Striking Vipers, obviously, they understand they've been having a rough time, but they're actually seeming like they are a little more confident going into tonight. Team seems like they are working better together. Some issues related to solo queue no longer really a problem either. So we might see a little bit of a different Striking Vipers on the night, especially because the team who we kind of usually expect to play through the top jungle side might start playing through other lanes this time around.
Yeah, I'm excited because we kind of came into this matchup. We were looking at ISU, who are the top dogs, like we've been saying. Versus Striking Vipers, like, okay, well, I guess we'll set our watch. I can go grab lunch after. I can go grab dinner after this. Pick up some delivery. I might as well. Yeah, but especially from what we heard, talking to Striking Vipers coaching staff, we are. Maybe we get a different kind of style from them, and maybe that is what we kind of get versus ISU has, I mean, to be fair, taking a little bit of a step back. We're getting to see a little bit of their gameplay, and if there's anything that we'd like to see from Striking Vipers is get down and dirty, because that's the only way you're going to bring down some of the top dogs.
Yeah, speaking of which, right now, too, you can see as well on screen with the late event that came in through besides Striking Vipers as well, and the Aurelia pick, which has been one of secret pocket picks for their team, although the mid laner doesn't like it, which
I was going to say.
Crazy. He's actually insane to say that.
That.
Let's not waste our precious brain cells on knowing and speaking something that is very, very obvious to many different people, right? Really is a fantastic champion. But one thing, though, which has been a main point for them too, is that they believe that this is the week that they're able to bring it back. Now, before, things were definitely not clicking for them at all, but finally, talking to the management, talking to some of the players, they've said that, hey, they're able to actually come together. They trust each other now. And I find you're talking to so many different players too. Like, trust is definitely one of the biggest thing you can have, because like if you're able to share the vision of another and know like, hey, I'm gonna go for this play, and you're like, all right, bet, send it full force. I'll be right behind the entire time. It sure does feel good though. But in y'all's opinion, do you think this is the week they could possibly bounce back? Dimitri, I'll come to you first.
Man, not against. It's like ISU is a top contender for what we have in this conference right now, and if there's ever a time right now, I think what striking Vipers should look to be doing. You said it before, they're kind of looking to use it as a lot of a really good practice for themselves. But the way that we've been seeing them play, however, is through their top side. And for ISU, that is their strongest set of players. Hyper and ShamWow doing fantastic job between the two of them, making basically what looks like impossible plays out of most of the kind of what happens. And coming up against these guys, I think for striking Vipers, they need to be looking to play upset to a lot of the good teams.
Beat, your thoughts?
I like it's definitely possible, but like Dimitri said, playing the top jungle against them is probably not going to work out very well because of Hyper and ShamWow. The fact that ISU as a team are not necessarily the kind of team that plays as a team, more like win lane, win game style play. There might be a chance in striking Vipers, if it's really true what they're saying, how they have started to really get this team cohesion working for them, that they can start playing through other lanes. They can show us a little bit of something different than what we're used to. I think there is a chance they can win it out on the night. But of course, I mean, if I'm being realistic, you got to look at the brackets that we saw earlier on. Bottom versus top three. There's a good chance tonight's not striking Vipers nights, but who knows?
We can be hopeful.
We can be hopeful.
Yeah.
I mean, hope definitely is a dangerous word, though. But interesting point that you both are all raised, that because as of late, the striking Vipers have actually been prioritizing playing through more so down to the bot side. Right now, we know ADC picks can be definitely back and forth, but I remember talking to the ADC, like he himself said, hey, like solo queue himself for us right now wasn't going too great, right? Things are kind of back and forth, but as an AC pick yourself, like man, it's like. But based on a champion pool, things are either coin flip, either you get a Felios, Kaisa, or Senna, or you lose the game, unfortunately. But
yeah, I mean that's just how AD carry is, right? Like most marksmen, it's like you get 3 or you get 4 if you're lucky, and that's about it. And most of the other marksmen, they're not terrible, but the matchups are just not great, or they just don't do what these other champions do. Like Felios, great amount of damage, can really take over team fights with both his Gravitum and his Calibrum. I look at this, and if you're going to be playing through bot side, Disconnector has shown to be a really great player, and especially playing around Senna, you can neutralize the laning phase really heavily. And especially with things like Seraphine coming into the mix, I'm looking at bot lane as you guys have a really strong set of champions. You have really great players down there that are starting to make their kind of their come up, especially someone who has such a historied past like Disconnector. This is the meta I think that bot lane can start to rise, including the fact that we have Moonstone Renewer so popular right now.
Yeah, and I think too another thing they could kind of look towards is I believe it's their support player as well, who does play those kind of like set support type champions, supports that could actually get a lot of value out of gold. And because they have this high priority on the Senna since those recent changes, Fasting Senna's back on the menu, so there is that potential as well. A very strong pick they can play for themselves in the bottom lane. Whether you get a champion like Set Gragas support who can really make use of that gold, or you can run a Seraphine as well because she's broken.
Champion's broken. I know you guys did a bit last week.
Dummy thick.
Champion is disgusting. Get that.
Please,
get
no.
That out of here right now, please.
We need to make sure people know, Dimitri. So please.
She's far too good in every situation absolutely possible too.
Yes.
Which, speaking of which as well, considering how she can be flexed through both mid and bot side as well, that's been one of the striking Vipers' overall advantages as a team right now, because that's one thing that they say that they will try to bring out, especially within their draft, is their ability to flex their champions depending on where they're looking to go to, which is one of the key ways they actually won that one game up against Windstrom last time too, based upon a couple of key picks that they decided they could abuse, and definitely many of them being based around that Moonstone staff composition. And another fun pick, which I really want to point out, was their set too, because the support and the bot side, which you mentioned, was right to the occasion. The set and the support has been a pick that is to make absolutely massive plays for them. So team fighting, getting together, getting early dragon control is definitely what I'm looking for Striking Vipers to do to be able to possibly take it home. But let's move on to ISU, the Dimitri. You had some thoughts as like I won't move on just yet. You seemed a little bit distracted.
It's okay. The way you described that sounds like Striking Vipers. All they need to do is just blow up an Nexus and they win. That's dragging, get a little bit of gold advantage here. Win your lanes. Just do that. I'm cool with mid. Yeah. I'm okay with trying to set up a lot of great things for Striking Vipers, but I want us to be realistic. This is a team that is bottom of the standings, and they can hope that their bot lane can try to stand up, but coming in against ISU, you're going to need a lot more than hope. You're going to need a gameplay to back it up.
I mean, hopefully that game plan would possibly be just catch ISU off guard with some of their picks. But going into talking about the ISU matchup as well, ISU right now, like you mentioned before, they're a fantastic ability not only in UPL but also in many of the collegiate leagues. Although they were knocked out of the open qualifiers, that just means that they've had a lot more time to be able to get together, focus on focus on Upsurge, to be able to absolutely smash every single team. Which that's exactly how they play here, because they just win lane.
They do, and that's the big style they go for here on ISU. And yeah, like you said, they don't make cup. Plenty of time now to take a break. A lot of teams who've been consistently in these tier 2s kind of are starting to face this burnout as an issue because of constant game days, because Riot is a big fan of amateur players. Anyway, so the way this ends up working is that ISU definitely have a little more time to... It's okay. But so the thing with ISU and how they play is that, and now they've had time to kind of take a break, kind of revisit how they play. But at the end of the day, if you just look at, again, the top jungle in ShamWow and Hyper, especially Shamhao, great strong side player. Hyper, insane jungle pool. A guy can just pretty much play it all here. And just example clips on the bottom here.
Yeah.
ISU
look at Hyper. Just look at Hyper. I love the positioning. Now, a lot of this did come down to a certain 80 carry flashing forward. We're not allowed to make those mistakes with bot lane, but Hyper makes a difference here, much like the production on the broadcast tonight. And I'm really loving what we've seen from them. Like we said when we were coming into this game, it feels like they are just playing a little bit more solo queue-esque, where they're just doing it. They're just playing around their mid laner. True Dozer's been fantastic at operating basically around the map and being that facilitator for his team. That has been basically his role in a lot of other amateur teams that he's been on throughout the years. And when I look at this, I see 5 individually really great players. I just think that, when we were looking at it and talking to the coaching staff, the cohesion is not quite there, which obviously something as Striking Vipers have been working on, but your cohesion's not going to matter when you go down and you're suddenly looking at your laning phase of 15 minutes, 2,000 gold down. Oh man, guys, where's my trust? Hey, we can kumbaya all the way to our go-to.
Well, look at the thing that makes it So Striking Vipers still have that chance in that if they've actually really been on the grind when it comes to teamwork, making these smart cross-map decisions, maybe if something like Shen, Galio, Twisted Fate gets through and that's something they're going to be able to grab for themselves, it can actually make a difference in the end. Because let's say your TF keeps diving top lane and there isn't a whole lot ShamWow can do. I mean, if you don't let ShamWow log into League of Legends, that's not a bad way to take down ISU.
True. Not wrong.
I mean, you do speak of the kumbaya aspect of it all.
That's the focus.
Because just to go bring it back to you, right? Because if you are to be comparison between these two teams, that's really a lot of where it comes down to. ISU when speaking to the team and the player as well. That's one thing that they've had a disconnect towards, right? Just not being able to trust in each other or like follow through on a lot of the macro plays that they may want to make. All of them have a very different vision of how certain plays and games should be played out to, which is why sometimes their macro may be a little bit more lacking. So, but like you mentioned before, they make up for that by just being really good at the game. That's simply where that starts and ends, and that is likely what'll happen tonight. Honestly, I'm so flustered because I'm thinking about it. That's just straight up it. Because a lot of the picks that they bring in are also all very blindable too. So I don't imagine we'll be seeing a ton of back and forth unless, like you mentioned before, Striking Vipers are able to bring out some sort of surprise pick. But speaking of picks, considering outside of ISU, like it's a outside of ISU, it's pretty much anything goes for them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The Striking Vipers, what are some picks would you find that they could possibly bring out which might shake up the game plan? I'll come to you first, Dimitri.
Man, I mean, there's just so much going on. When you look at amateur and I think a little bit more professional play, we're looking at Kaisa just being a massive force in the meta. Basically, almost 70% pick rate on LCS. And we're looking across amateur, basically the biggest tour de force. You have things on red side. We take a look. ISU will have access to blue side, so they won't have counter pick. Coming in, I'm looking at Striking Vipers. They have access to so many great things. Udyr's on the table for them. I think that Karma and Seraphine are kind of making their rounds to being one of the best in terms of those enchanter supports, and is flexible in 3 roles if you're playing Seraphine or Karma. I take a look at this and I'm saying, Striking Vipers, how willing are you to just dip and dive into what's the easiest to play? Now, Chanters are not always the easiest to execute. However, if you're on the side, if you're against ISU where you're going up things like Elise, Lee Sin, or Hecarim for Hyper, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you. And I think that kind of playing into their style or playing a team fight composition versus them is not going to favor Striking Vipers.
I see where you're coming from, but I feel like at the end of the day, that's going to end up being kind of the easiest sort of composition to really get through, the standard front to back kind of comp. And I think in this kind of matchup, that's kind of what Striking Vipers needs to go through. Like, yeah, of course, comfort is going to be a big thing against a top 3 team in this group. But again, ease of execution is going to be a big factor for them. That's why I think to myself, the globals, I feel like they, of course, just being good for their ults to get across the map. In general, I think you can see some weaker teams use these almost as a crutch to kind of cover up some of your mistakes. Oh, someone oversteps in the side lane. Oh, you know what? That's okay. We have heroes entrance. It makes it a little better. You know what I'm trying to say? So I think that could be useful for Striking Vipers. And of course, if it ends up being something like a Galio, as long as you have another, maybe an engaged support that can kind of pair off really well, that's because Heroes Entrance is better as a follow-up, it will still work really well in team fights as well for Striking Vipers.
Because consider right now as well that Striking Vipers aren't necessarily a team which I've seen so far, like just depending on what they've played, they're not one to necessarily try to pick pick comps that just like follow up one after another, right? It's just a lot of it has been comfort picks on, like you mentioned before, what's really been meta. Like some of them that we said before, right? Which they like to fall back on, aside from the one that we mentioned that we flexed around a lot, like things like the Karma, the Seraphine, the Kaisa, Aatrox, Thresh, like set. It's just common picks across the board, which Dimitri mentioned before, like, hey, this is just what's good right now across the board. So surprise picks, I mean, we might be able to see something that might be able to shake things up a little bit, but they have to get past laning first, which is my biggest worry personally for them, because ISU will likely be able to just snowball their lead all the way through and not even necessarily giving them a chance to fight together as one.
I don't know, man. You look across the lanes, you basically have to find a way to nullify laning phase, and I think it's going to be very tough. Like, you can play tank top lane, but I think Shamwa and Hyper are going to just shut that down incredibly quickly. And with their bot lane, you're playing against what is assumedly going to be Seraphine or Senna. I take a look at this. I look at the champion pools between these 2 teams. Their junglers are basically playing the exact same champions across the board from each other. Their laners are doing the exact same. If the champion pools are shared, I think that when it comes down to draft, it's really not going to be too much of a surprise for us. And if we see more and more of what Striking Vipers have put forward, it's going to be yet another loss on their column. And I mean, champions can help you, right? Like, an easier draft is always going to make it that much easier. But I mean, anything can happen. You have 10 players inside of the server. You have a bunch of human errors that can happen. These guys are amateur players. They're not expected to play perfectly like professionals. I think with the errors that are likely to occur, we will see that Striking Vipers will start to have a very hard time, especially laning phase. It's so volatile, and that's the hardest thing you have to lock down.
Okay.
True, but as long as they do get themselves some neutralizing lanes, I feel like even if you pick a tank top laner, like let's say something gets on the board, kind of like a Malphite, that kind of champ that can go down a couple of kills, miss a little bit of CS, if you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about, and can still function in these team fights, can still, just stretch the neck and then press that R key as we
Yes,
all
the hard.
lovingly know him to do.
Makes up
Yeah,
the
yeah,
15
just,
there. Boom. All right, cool.
It's
All
like
right.
05 in lane, no problem. But
Travis, you have
something,
experience when you said top lane, right?
oh yeah, oh, he knows all about that.
We're not gonna get into that right now. We're not gonna talk about gonna talk about me ever playing Malphite ever again. It's not gonna be an issue at this point. But what I do want to get from you right now is numbers. I need stats and I need matchup. What is it going to be? 2, 0, 3, 4 for each of these teams. Dimitri, I'll start off with you.
3, 4.
Oh, 3, 4. We're just counting every single number. I don't know. I'm going to say 2-0 for ISU. However, I will also say that if Striking Vipers are somehow able to deliver merch to my place in about an hour and a half, I maybe change my prediction. Maybe add an extra game, maybe add an extra 2 there. But yeah, I think ISU have a pretty easy easy setup for themselves here.
All right, beat.
I know it's a little uninteresting to say the same thing as Dimitri, but yeah, 2-0 ISU. It's pretty simple. No amount of merch is really going to change my mind on that one. I mean, unless it's a lot, then unless they're trying to cop me that TLX Naruto, if you know what I'm talking about. But
Yes, sir.
You know,
I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm saying it's going to be 2-1 for ISU. I got some faith in Striking Vipers, but that all being said, the game is ready. The casters are ready. So let's get ready to throw it over to Mad Magical and Chilling Walk. Take it away, gentlemen.
Guys, it's good to be here. Good to be able to cast some games for the UPL. Myself, Mad Magical, joined in by the one and only Chilling Walk. Are you excited for these games today, Will?
I am pretty excited. I got my boy Disconnector on ISU, who went to Grandview University when I was there. Always got a root for the other Will that is in Illinois right now. So I'm excited to see how well he's doing, man.
Yeah, I mean, ISU have been a team that have definitely had some really high highs, also some low lows, but they're a team that everyone's always excited to see. They have such a unique style of playing that they always are able to provide, especially when you look at Drudozer out there in the mid lane and how deep of a champion pool this player has. But it's going up against the Striking Vipers, a team that has been struggling a little bit going into the UPL, but they were able to at least get one game that they were able to take off of Windstorm last week. And when you look at Vipers and how they draft, it is a little unusual, but that's something that I feel like could be their strength, is that they might be able to catch teams off guard, especially a team like ISU, who tend to have their own weird way of playing. Maybe we could see the Vipers counter that.
And I think at this point, Alex, I think it's fair to say that when we take a look at Illinois State University, I mean, they're still kind of searching their way too. I know we say they have kind of like a unique style and everything else, but the reason why it's unique style is because they play towards their lanes. They don't really do anything when it comes to, playing top side or bot side or, playing for a certain player. That's why it's kind of weird to see ISU still kind of struggle when it comes to finding their identity. And we take a look at Striking Vipers. Well, I just dropped my pen. We take a look at Striking Vipers, right? They're the team that needs to kind of figure out their identity ASAP if they want to kind of stick together. So it's curious. It definitely surprises me that we have both these teams that have an identity that don't really have a solidified identity.
And when you look over towards the Vipers, it does seem like they're starting to at least get that identity. One of the things to talk about is Karma and being able to play the Chemtech Purifier Karma top lane, or even support that was being mentioned on the desk, and how that's going to be able to impact these games. The Vipers seem to be very strong and very happy with that. It seems to really be able to help facilitate what they want to be able to build, but now it depends. Since that's such an easy thing to take away, you just ban Karma, boom, that whole strategy's gone.
It definitely is a good strategy. I know that Karma did get buffed, and talking to some of the other colleagues that we have, some of our colleagues have already said that in this patch 11.3, that a lot of these Moonstaff compositions should be coming through. And so far, when we take a look at Cup, they haven't. We're still seeing team fight. We're still seeing gigantic 5-on-5 front to back team fight compositions, and we haven't seen these kind of Moonstaff compositions being designed here. Striking Vipers are, of course, ones who are down to play it. But the biggest issue is that when you're running Moonstaff, of course, it's going to win on a 5-5, but it's also harder to execute individually per player, and that's why even though you ban the Karma, or even though if it gets through, sometimes it just doesn't work out. And that's why when we take a look at Striking Vipers and the lineup that they have, it just kind of looks a little bit underwhelming when we take a look at the rest of the UPL rosters.
Especially against ISU, a team that love
Yeah.
to play very aggressively. Hyper, as a jungler, is someone that we could really start talking about on what he likes to play and what I've always seen Hyper play in the past, which was these heavily aggressive, in-your-face junglers.
Yeah.
Think Elise, think any, like, Nidalees, even the Talias back in the day. That was what Hyper really got his name on, was playing these AP burst
easily.
mages out of the jungle. And what's gotten meta again? Talia, Elise is starting to crop up, Nidalee's still there. It all works to his favor.
And that supports the way ISU likes to play. You know, they like picking for lanes, and once you have winning lanes, you get a pretty solid winning jungle, and you might as well try and carry from the jungle position too. And that's why ISU is kind of fitting this role here. But that's also the reason why it's inhibiting them from beating the top 8 teams, you know, from getting into the higher tier 2 tournaments in a Proving Ground circuit right now. They can't really seem to contest against teams who, you know, can lose gracefully, that can sacrifice a lot of resources to make sure that one of their sides is a little bit stronger, you know, and that's why it's definitely disheartening to see ISU kind of go through this where they keep on trying to win through everything. But the moment one thing loses, it's a pretty fragile building. When one pillar starts falling, the rest of the domino starts falling as well, Alex.
Right, and like you look back to last week where they lost 2-0 to Supernova, it was not really the best of performance out of them. There was a big team fight. I think game 1 had something like, what was it, like 64 kills in that game? Some absurdly massive amount of kills, and it was a 35-minute game, bloodshed left and right. I assume, sure, they like to play that style, but it can be to the detriment, as you were mentioning, Will.
And that's why I think ISU at this point as a team needs to kind of temper themselves and, you know, throw away some of these egos that some of these players even have, you know, when talking to the coach and when hearing some reports from Ravish here when he got to talk to ISU, a lot of these players are kind of bashing heads on the way they want to play, and that's why they're like, you know, F it, just pick for yourself, pick to win lane, and then we should be okay, right? That's one of the reasons why I think ISU is kind of hitting that roadblock, and I really want to see if they can just, you know, shake those kind of egos off, make sure you guys are kind of getting together and seeing if, you know, as these teams kind of just wrap around and make sure they're very cohesive.
Right, but now we've gotten to the ban Seraphine. Not too surprising to see her banned first. A lot of teams aren't really enjoying playing against her or even with her. Just how powerful and impressive she feels to play against, and even play with is a little bit of that boring style. If you think back to the Senna Tom Kench meta, where everyone's like, oh, it's so boring, it's uninteractive, it doesn't really do anything. That's a couple of the complaints I've been hearing with Seraphine. But Yone on the other side, banned by the Vipers, is not too surprising. Drudozer loves to be able to have that in the pocket of a pick that can come out and go into most matchups that would seemingly be meta that are you know, the Orianas and Syndras, and go right into their face to try to win out in the lane.
Yeah, and everything just kind of seems to align with what both these teams like to do. Striking Vipers, of course, are banning things that have a pretty solid individual agency from ISU, right? Yone, compared to his other brother, is pretty self-sufficient when it comes to just involving himself within a team. Camille's the same exact way. When we take a look at ISU's bans, right? Seraphine, no way, no how is the strongest at level 1 all the way through. So you get rid of it, it doesn't really fulfill the way ISU wants to play, which is hardcore win lane, right? Same thing with Karma, you know, and also these two champions, or a lot of these kind of champions that they are looking to ban, are basically neutralizers. You know, they inhibit heavy early game play, and that's why ISU, of course, banning Lulu and or Karma, and of course Seraphine and Udyr too.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, though, to see how bans change, you know, as the patches come through, even if not necessarily having nerfs coming into things right away, such as, like, Kaisa that is being covered right there, that's probably going to get some nerfs coming down the line, but she's been absolutely oppressive throughout Season 11 so far, so it's not too surprising to see that. But the picks that are left open that are a little shocking, the Pantheon, think, the Olaf as well, these picks that have been characteristically throughout Season 11 dominating in the meta.
Yeah, Pantheon, of course, did get nerfed in 11.3 a little bit, but when we take a look at Senna, Senna's still a pretty dang strong champion, and it kind of fulfills a little bit of both things, where she does have a little bit of early game power. Of course, she's a little bit weaker compared to other traditional AD carries, but then her scaling is impeccable. And you pair her up with a lot of these early game fighters, she kind of just sits there and just does her thing. So I'm surprised that Striking Vipers actually let this go through. I know Drew Dozer is a big fan of Yone. I know that ShamWow, of course, plays Camille, but giving him a champion that can scale into the late, another champion that can scale into the late game, and also kind of forces Striking Vipers to play in and go into ISU, usually is a recipe for disaster.
And maybe they thought they could go for a trade, the Senna for Karma kind of style, where you give up that feeling like Karma's going to be able to provide a little bit more. But this Misfortune pickup coming in for Vipers this early on. And that's a pick that we saw fall to the wayside for quite some time. And it's a bit surprising now to see grabbed up by the Vipers here instead of going for something, say, like Jhin, to be able to have a lot of that range capability to be able to stay away. Or hell, oftentimes we've been seeing people just try to wait it out and see what else is going to be paired up with that Senna before grabbing the ADC.
Yeah, but the issue, Alex, and the biggest issue I want to point out right now is that when Senna's picked up, usually you pair Senna with a lot of heavy engage because, one, she can support that heavy engage because of her range and because of the way she scales, and two, she already has a good amount of mobility when she actually just closes the distance with the W that, you know, cloaks her and her teammates. When you're picking the AD carry into Senna, it's usually going to be Ezreal. Why? Because Ezreal can kind of win the lane with poke and kind of outrange Senna for quite a bit and scales okay into the 1-2 item power spike and avoids those kind of dives. Misfortune doesn't do that, Alex. I don't know if you've seen Misfortune kind of dodge out on gigantic wombo combos. Usually that's not the case, and that's why I'm a little bit worried of what Striking Vipers is trying to do here. And that's where Karma and Misfortune don't really work well when ISU is going to be double downing here. Olaf kind of doesn't seem to work well either because now you're kind of looking to pivot into ISU, which they're always down to do, right? If you're a composition that is made to kite back and then you're pivoting forward into ISU, who's probably going to be double downing on diving into your back line, it's not going to be a fun time.
And that is going to be, I think, an issue that the Vipers have to figure out what they're going to do to deal with that Hecarim, with that Thresh. Senna being able to outrange them and do so much from a good distance while keeping herself safe. And hell, she's not necessarily even going to be as important as long as she's able to get some of her combo off. It's what do they build around for Drew Dozer? What do they pick for ShamWow in that top lane? Do they put ShamWow onto a tank, or are they trying to see if they can have more carry potential besides just that of Drew Dozer or even Hyper on Hecarim?
And that's where when we look at Striking Vipers, Alex, the one saving grace that they do have is that they do have a lot of early game viability to actually just start fights, because Olaf Axe is going to hurt. Misfortune, of course, has a lot of base stats in her early game kit that can start fights overall. So they do have one way of winning, which is right now the early game. And if they want to double down on that and try and beat ISU at their own game, that could work out. And if it does get to that point, it all depends on how Striking Vipers can kind of play the end game, you know?
Right now, with Victor getting banned away, I'm wondering if we're going to see mid lane ban come in from ISU, or if they're going to try to see if they can double up into the top lane, maybe take away Narj, something that we've seen. Even though that Karma could definitely be going up into the top lane, we have seen Diesel play that quite a number of times for Vipers, where they flexed around Karma so that they wanted to be able to get the Moonstaff, get the Staff of Flowing Water, as well as that Chemtech Putrefier onto Karma top side, while sacrificing a little bit of what they could normally do for Russian Ronin and for St. Ghoul in the bot lane. It's something that I'm curious. That Karthus, however, I doubt that that would be the pick that you want to go for, even though I guess you could put that mid lane or... Yeah, that's like, I feel like that was just a...
Not.
So with the set, if that set gets locked in, that means Diesel is more than likely going to go for Karma.
We'll still have to see though. This set could technically be flexed in the top and support role, and the Karma could be sent mid for DRX. The biggest weakness right now for Striking Vipers is now the late game, right? You're doubling down on that early game, and that means that your fifth pick has to kind of save that draft to make sure it's a pure 50-50, so that you actually scale into the later stages. But again, you have to kind of pick a mid laner that can emphasis, diving in, something that is a little bit longer range, along with the Karma Misfortune. Striking Vipers has to, their pick and ban has to kind of align perfectly with what ISU is setting up for. Because right now ISU has a relatively balanced composition. You see them actually pivoting away now, which I think is very smart, knowing that Set's going to be walking in, Olaf's going to be walking in, Karma is making sure that she is enabling both of those people looking to dive in, and along with Misfortune going in there. So I'm liking what ISU is looking to do here. I actually don't like this as your pick here because
Yeah,
Oriana kind of stops you, and Gangplank ulti is going to destroy you on the backside.
Right.
I really like what ShamWow actually picked up for himself, because we take a look at 4 out of the 5 members of Striking Vipers. That cannon barrage is going to be insane when it comes to just controlling the terrain of fights.
Yeah, the Azir is something that I feel like does stand out a bit here. Normally, you kind of pick it to go up against Oriana to try to be able to push out the wave and be able to at least do something else, but it feels even disjointed with what Vipers have. Sure, it offers some disengage. If you use Emperor's Defy to be able to keep at bay both Hecarim and Thresh if they are able to manage to land some of their lockdown. But like you mentioned, Gangplank's going to be able to put that Cannon Barrage in the backline to do a lot of damage. Senna's going to be able to do a lot of damage from range. Oriana, if she's able to get a good shockwave, is going to be able to facilitate a pick for Hyper to follow up on.
Yeah.
It just feels like there are elements that the Vipers wanted to go for that they kind of got themselves locked in an awkward position. Some skirmishing with Olaf and Azir, maybe even Set to be able to rotate up, because I'm still expecting that to be a support Set as opposed to top lane Set.
Yeah.
But it's just options that Vipers had that they wanted to get everything, but unfortunately fell short of it all.
Yeah, more than likely you do want to send the Set on the bottom side because you don't want Set facing into a Gangplank.
No.
Otherwise, you're just going to give him free Grasp of the Undying procs. But Striking Vipers, you know, if they do have a way of getting into the late game, right? And in the later stages of the game, it's just going to be Azir versus the world. That's kind of like what they're betting on in the later stages, and hopefully Moonstaff from Diesel can help out DRX and potentially help out Rush and Ronin when it comes to just the late game damage here. But the biggest worry for Striking Vipers is the artillery from ShamWow, and of course the sniping from Disconnector on the Senna in the later stages. That's
Right.
the big hurdle that they have to kind of go through, and if they are able to, that'll be a very, very good thing. The question is, their composition is designed to fight in the early game. Are they down to fight against ISU, who is notorious for trying to get individual leads in all places of the map?
They're pretty much trying to call the bluff of ISU, saying like, we dare you to try to fight us early because we have a composition that can fight early with skirmishing elements, but you still have to go through with it. You still have to be able to flex your muscles a bit using more on that Olaf to be able to say, I dare you, ISU, to try to play that aggressive style that you're so well known for. And I doubt ISU are going to back down.
And even then, it's up to also ISU to even not even want to just... They don't even have to take those fights, right? Because their competition scales really well into later stages. If they avoid those fights entirely, they also win too, right? So Striking Vipers have to find these openings to force ISU to fight. That's where it gets a little bit harder for the Striking Vipers, if they can kind of find those opportunities or set up dives. This is where team cohesion and getting those kind of early game plays that propel you outside of individual fights can get you a lot of gold. The question is, can Morn and Diesel set up waves to dive ShamWow, which is Gangplank's biggest weakness? Can Morn and the bottom lane of Rush and Ronin and Sangul set up dives against Disconnector and Nausicaa? That's where we have to kind of question what Striking Vipers can kind of open themselves up to, because DRX, he's not going to be moving anywhere. He's going to be more likely sitting his butt in the mid lane just farming out with Druidos the entire time, right? So that's always the biggest thing for Striking Vipers of, if they get that opening play, they can potentially find success.
But they got to find that opening play in the first place. They got to be able to find that play, that aggression, be able to make the plays happen into ISU so they can continue to snowball from there. Because if they let up on the gas at all, this composition, despite the fact having a scaling option in Azir, even in Misfortune, can fall flat if you're not able to continue that relentless pursuit of fighting and skirmishing and winning.
Yeah, man, we'll have to see what Striking Vipers can do. They're not a team really made on just fighting early game and looking for early game plays. But if, you know, that's where we look at Striking Vipers. We have to see if they can develop. That's always the biggest thing when we keep eyes on when it comes to North American talent, right, Alex? Is, you know, even though you're currently 0-3 in the Upsurge Premier League, can you, as a team, develop further from this point? And That's going to be something that we have to keep our eyes on and see if they actually have some of those gears in motion. Because if you guys are rinsing and repeating the same thing, you guys aren't learning, that's just called insanity.
And that's what I want to see coming in from them. We're about to get into the game number 1 between ISU, Illinois State University, and the Striking Vipers. Let's get on to the Rift and see how these two perform.
We got the line of scrimmage, Alex. Can you give us a
Fight.
hut?
Fight.
Blue 42.
No. Fight. Fight. There we go. This is what I want to see. I like fighting. I like pressure, though it's just going to be a little bit of trade of damage.
Yeah.
Nothing too severe. Probably going to have both sides be able to recall, be able to get back. No, actually, with minions spawning up, not going to actually be able to do so.
By the way, that's called an offsides if you actually step past the line of scrimmage before the hut is called. So technically, ISU actually has to kind of step back 10 yards, and take the penalty. So.
Well, I mean, it does seem like they are. They're not actually going for the invade.
Exactly. Yeah. So good. Yeah, we have to follow the rules of scrimmage, man. You can only go when the hut is called. You do go.
Is it hut or height?
It depends on the QB. It all depends on how you want to say. I think it all depends on what it is.
I'm down for. You're gonna know more about football than I'm gonna know. I don't know. I
know a good amount of football. My brother's a big Peyton Manning fan when he was following the Indiana Cowboys.
So, my whole family, like my side of my family, is really into football, right? To the point where they even like college football.
Whoa!
Hold on though. Russian Ronin had to flash away. He has healed, and the ignite came out of Nausicaa.
Okay.
So that's not gonna look good. Probably gonna have a kill come onto Russian Ronin soon. So going back to the point I was making. Am I allowed? Come on, let me tell my story, guys. I
want to hear the story, guys.
Yeah. So, family likes college football, right? And they always did like the bowl stuff where you pick the teams and you put down $10, and if you won, you got a certain amount of money, blah, blah, blah. Well, I never cared about football and stuff, yet I would always win or get second place in that family tournament every time. And my family always hated that because they knew I knew nothing about football, but I would always be either the winner or the second, like the runner-up. And they're like, how do you do this? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just picking teams that I think sound cool. Right now.
Speaking of fights, though.
And sounding cool as well. St. Ghoul did a lot of damage onto Hyper. Still alive, trying to chase it down, but first blood goes over to Disconnect with the flash over the wall coming in from Nausicaa. Followed up, so they get a 1-for-1 trade and gift gold over to Morn.
Yeah, a little bit bold of ISU to actually opt into that fight, I'm being honest, Alex. Even though they were able to kind of walk up and start up the blue buff. Again, Striking Vipers are the team that has a little bit better of base stats overall, but so far in individual laning, we saw ShamWow beat Diesel. We all saw Disconnector and Nausicaa beat Ronin and St. Ghoul, and that's kind of like what we were wondering, right? Can Striking Vipers hold up individually against ISU? And it looks like it isn't. ISU kind of just dug themselves in a grave, as we see the Viking looking to see if he can go for a little blitz in the bottom side jungle.
But I want to see how Morn does with this little bit of extra gold that he's now been influxed with, since Disconnector was the one to get first blood. That means you're gonna have the Senna, who of course you can argue Senna is more of a supportive style ADC anyways. That's still someone who's going to be able to try to win this lane even harder. We already saw how much damage they were able to get early flash and heal out of Russian Ronin, while the flash is still held on by Disconnector, which means once you get the Senna to recall, that's going to be a lot of extra damage into the pocket of this bot lane for ISU that they can apply pressure to Russian Ronin and St. Ghoul, forcing Morn to be the one to have to answer that pressure.
I mean, he's going to be, right? He's mainly the big one who's playing the offensive line for Striking Vipers, and he's going to have to be the one.
We're still going with the football references?
Yeah, we're going with the football references. Alex, we've been commenting for quite a while now. I like to say we're kind of part of the casting family, and a lot of us casting family members are big football fans. You have Kangas, who enjoys football.
I know everyone is except for me. I'm like one of the few people that's not.
Yeah, well, I think Smax is a part of your side where he doesn't really watch a lot of traditional sports. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Smax doesn't watch a lot of football.
I have to ask Smax. Me and Smax haven't really had conversations on sports, which makes me think that is possible. But it's just like I don't really have conversations on sports with many people because I don't really care for sports except for hockey. I like hockey.
I'm from the Great North in Minnesota, but I never really got into hockey. I don't know. It's not a sport that I like.
So I actually worked at the Honda Center, which is the pond down here in it's up in Anaheim, and I actually worked there. And I wasn't into hockey until I worked there. Hockey's one of those sports you kind of have to watch in person. It's a lot better when you're
Yeah.
in person.
I feel like it is because sometimes they get in fights. Like you hear all the pushing and the rumbling. Speaking of rumbling, we have Hyper on
Hyper.
4 legs. He's seeing if he can go in.
Last Embrace wasn't able to connect, but Russian Ronin, he went the wrong way with a huge shield coming in from St. Gould. The Ignite is ticking down, trying to see if they can take him down. Not going to be able to get the death sentence, but instead they're going to probably be able to get the kill and gift it over to Hyper. It was traded since Morn was able to run down Disconnector with Drudoser showing up. He's level 6, could have gotten Shockwave, but not going to be in range to be able to take that back. So it's still going to be a 1-for-1 trade. Here it is. Going to be able to get the Shockwave to draw back in Russian Ronin and get the kill for Sham Wow, who hasn't even left the top lane. So instead of the 1-for-1 that initially had started, ICU will come out with 2.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, that Cannon Barrage is kind of insane against the Striking Vipers composition. No one has dashes outside of DRX, and because of that, they have to walk through, and it just makes Drudoser then have to burn the flash on that Shockwave, man. DRX, of course, is gonna see if he can punish Drudoser in the mid lane, but again, this is a mid lane that farms a lot. The only time DRX is gonna get a kill is if Morn shows up.
And since Morn was given another kill in that fight, it's more on to Morn on how they're going to be able to play this. I do like that they're trying to get this objective of the Infernal Dragon, take that away since...
Disconnector?
Disconnector, I'm confused on why you're there. You know that they're taking that. That was a lot of damage traded back. Morn's easily getting the objective. Just give it over.
Yep. He didn't. They got the Fire Dragon for themselves. I'm kind of perplexed as why Disconnector actually stepped up there. Definitely, yeah. I think you just want to say hi.
I'm surprised he didn't die, to be honest. He should have died.
Yeah, I think Morn was like, you know what, let's not be too greedy, which I respect,
I like fighting. I don't know.
I know you do.
I am still in the opinion that Flash is an offensive summoner spell and should only be used to get kills.
Alex, I'm still surprised that you love fighting so much, yet you don't commentate fighting games.
It is actually a surprise, isn't it? I guess
Yeah.
it's just a different style as right now Diesel. No Flash available, gets knocked back by Hyper, even with the Onslaught of Shadows locked down onto Diesel. He's able to trade it back, but this TP is going to be a little bit too late for DRX. He knocks back both of them. Morn's here in the flanks. Hyper has no mana, trying to be able to run away from this fight, getting slowed down. No, the Undertow is going to go wide. Drudos are able to walk the entire way up to the top lane. Shockwave is back up and available. Morn's going to be able to at least get the one trade. Ragnarok popped as well, but taken down by Drudoser. Huge amount of shutdown gold gifted over to this Orianna. Chase away Azir. Make it so that it's, again, going to be a 2-for-1 exchange. ISU, the ones that are going to come out ahead, as DRX will barely be able to survive.
It's always that question, Alex. Can Striking Vipers handle the early game against ISU, even though your champions are designed to do so? And right now, ISU is just getting the better of them. The better ISU plays this early game, or if ISU doesn't even opt into it, the longer term and the longer payoff it's gonna be, man. You invest in Doge coins, and eventually you're gonna fly to the moon.
To the moon! Yes, I agree.
To the moon!
But I will say, a bit unfortunate there for the Vipers, that shutdown gold now into the pockets of Drudoser. I mean, you're now giving this huge influx onto this Orianna, and that's the second rotation out of Drudoser compared to the simple one out of DRX using the TP to be able to show up, and they still got a 2-for-1 trade in favor of ISU. They're, again, coming out ahead, and you can see that in the gold. 2,000 gold, and we're only 9 minutes into the game, where you'd expect with the Olaf that's 1-3, this to be a dead even game.
I mean, that's what I was saying, right? Like, Drudos was able to move a lot more than DRX. At the end of the day, even if they both don't move, ISU will still win, right? If nothing happens on the map, ISU gets the advantage because they scale better. If you allow the entire game just sit 0-0 and everyone just farming and doing their thing, it's going to pay off for ISU. And that's why I feel like DRX is kind of forced to move with the squad, because he's like, guys, we need to get these early game plays rolling. We need to see if we can shut down Shamwa. We need to see if we can stop Disconnector from generating a solid bot lane lead, or just stopping him from scaling, right? And that's one of the issues of this Azir, is that you're kind of depending on Morn to do his thing and succeed. But if he doesn't, he falls flat. It's up to the mid lane to kind of salvage things. And DRX, he tried, but then he didn't really get anything off of it, instead making sure the game's still in a relatively even state.
Right, and the fact that, honestly, at that point, if you're DRX, you sacrifice yourself. Get the kill and get Morn out of there, as right now, bot lane, another heal coming out. Not going to be able to get to the Dawning Shadow to be able to connect. Instead, it's the
Hyper
flank
here.
from Hyper. This should be an easy double kill. Just going to be able to gallop right in and take both of them. Onslaught of Shadows out of there.
Yeah, that was honestly just a proper setup from ISU, and also just better 2v2s from Disconnector and Nausicaa at the end of the day. When you take a look at Misfortune, take a look at Set, usually it should be able to fight those 2-on-2s to kind of win those trades. But then the way Disconnector and Nausicaa moves in the lane and the way they're just kind of setting up the waves themselves are kind of getting it. I don't know if you guys want to opt in for this Steel Morn, because there's 4 people sitting around that blue buff. Hyper, of course, gets it, and Morn's sitting here around, but maybe ISU's overstaying their welcome.
I don't know. There's no
ulti,
TPs on the side of Vipers. Not going to be able to get the flank. They are going to be able to get the slow down shockwave
Druido's
kill
right, yeah.
onto Morn. Disconnector gets it, and the TP comes in from ShamWow. Should be able to chase it down. Saint School, he has the shield if necessary. Going to finally pop it, but once that shield's gone, it's a killing spree for Hyper. On the other side, DRX is getting engaged by Trudozer. Still, the kill goes over on the other side of Sham.
Drew's
Wow,
still alive,
DRX was
man.
not able to get anything, and now he's going to be run down. This is going to be a delayed ace flash over the wall. They could continue this chase underneath the turret, but they back out, giving some respect and not actually going to go for that delayed ace.
What a puzzling decision from the Striking Vipers, Alex. 4 people are sitting at your blue buff, and y'all make the call to try and fight it when Drew still has ulti. And remember that when Morn goes into Ragnarok mode, he's a squishy Viking. You can actually take him down because he loses those resistances. And you guys opt into that fight. Now you
Right.
guys are at a bigger deficit in an early game composition that your only guarantee is DRX on the Azir, who isn't really able to just kind of sit and farm because you guys are calling him. You're pulling him up and down across the map, Alex. I honestly don't know what Striking Vipers and the motive was when it came to that contest.
Not at all, especially because, my bad, I was saying delayed ace, but Diesel wasn't even a part of that fight either.
Yeah.
'Cause he didn't even have TP. He finally has TP available. It's like, I get you want to be able to route out ISU from your jungle, but at some point you have to concede certain things. You have to give it up, because the more you try to gain for yourselves, the more you're actually losing. Now with a 5,000 gold deficit for the Vipers, they have no pressure around these objectives that they had been doing a great job of controlling. You saw more get, Dragon and Rift Herald early on, but now they're then completely forced out of that river. ShamWow is able to get his 1v1 into Diesel pretty easily.
Yeah.
Every single lane has this gold influx that's going to be able to flex over their might onto the other opponents. They're like, look at bot lane. Disconnector and Nausicaa.
Like, what is this?
2v2. The damage
Okay.
on St. Ghoul. Play back. Another kill. Bullet time. What's it going to do against the Dawning Shadow? Flash in. That's a double kill for Disconnector.
This is what we were always wondering about, man. Even we're gonna have another fight on the top side too, Alex, and Morn's gonna get jumped on.
Diesel is? Jesus.
Yeah.
And Morn gets himself a lot of damage, but it's not enough to be able to take down ShamWow before he dies.
Like-
And there it is. Get the double kill over. That's going to be a killing spree for ShamWow. Easy peasy for ISU. Even with the Rift Herald being popped in the top lane, they still have the minions to be able to threaten these plays.
It is so hard to see Striking Vipers be in this position, Alex. It's like I'm going to a boxing match and I'm seeing a lightweight versus a heavyweight, and the heavyweight has like 2 champion belts, and the lightweight's just kind of sitting there with, fresh off practice and trying to get in. He thinks he can do it. He has the I think I can mentality, the Cinderella story. At this point, he actually just got hard beat in the first 3 minutes, man. It's not a fun sight.
No, it's not. And this game right now is just the gold lead is ballooning for ISU. Every single time something happens, it's just getting worse and worse. I think they have this flank on the Hyper. Hyper has the blast cone there if needed. Even with the root for Diesel, he's too fast for you to be able to keep up with at this point. You're not going to be able to make sure that you actually can lock down that root, and Hyper's just going to take some more chickens for himself.
I'm done for chickens. I did make a tweet that I wanted to try out Jollibees as Disconnector, takes, I guess you could
Jollibees?
say another, Jollibees. Have you not heard of Jollibees? It's
I haven't. We don't need to talk about that kill in the bot lane. Talk to me about Jollibees.
All right, so Jollibees is a fast food chain that I think is Filipino, and it's really cool because they got like garlic rice and like chicken and like adobo rice too. It's really cool, and there's not one in Minnesota. According to the homies in Toronto and in Houston, they say it's alright, but the biggest thing, guys, is that like it's fast food, Asian food, and that's what I'm waiting for.
Actually, that sounds pretty dope. I'm down for that. I'm definitely down for that. But right now, we have to keep going with this game. in the middle of trying to do some research to find out what the fastest time for any game has been in the UPL. And so we actually have a replay to be able to jump into first, and then while the replay happens, I'm going to continue this research.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so that's what happened to St. Cole.
Oh,
it's okay.
Nice, Shem. Wow, nice flash. I liked that.
Well, in regards to that replay, it's just St. Ghoul
Getting bopped.
Boop. Hooked. Boop. Line and a sinker.
Yeah, that's all I mean, all it is just getting bopped over and over again. It's just boop, boop, boop. Not really much you can do there. Unfortunately, when you're down this much, you haven't even gotten a completed full item. You're only sitting on Swifties. You're not really going to be able to survive a lot that comes in. Sure, you can argue that Nazca's same thing, but the shields are clearly been enough, and Nazca already on point with these hooks to be able to make it so they can follow up any damage coming in from Disconnector sitting 5, 1, and 4. Already a Kraken Slayer completed. There's going to be a lot of damage coming out compared to Russian Ronin still working on that Manamune.
Alex, what was the fastest game time? Did you manage to find that or no?
Yes, I did. So it was last week. It was between Conviction and Boise State. It was a 15-minute and 38-second game.
Who won?
That would be Conviction. Conviction were able to win that one. And then another one I was able to find is that Striking Vipers unfortunately had a game last week in 18 minutes and 47 seconds, with ISU having an 18-minute game that they were able to win against Merc Esports at 18 minutes and 46 seconds.
All right. Well, unfortunate. Striking Vipers looking like they're on the way to losing a 20-minute game, unfortunately. ISU looking to see if they can add another fast win here. I think the Striking Vipers want to see if they can try and contest for this third Quadrake. They are, but I don't know if you want to take this, Alex.
Gold deficit?
This
is not a fight you want to play in on the 3. Shockwave onto them as well. Immediately eviscerates them. Look at Russian Ronin. He's fighting 2 levels down to Hyper. They easily got him. Only DRX was able to survive. And Nit might be run down right now as Hyper galloping his way. Is he going to find him? No, he's not going to notice that he's all the way back by the inhibited turret. So that's just going to be a clean win for the side of ISU. A clean dragon on top of it. They might even be able to get a bunch of turrets with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to break down that fight. The only thing I could say is that when you're fighting against an Orianna or Hecarim, just don't sit as a 5-man unit together. And I mean, that's kind of like what happened, right? They all sat there and they got a gigantic shockwave off. Make sure you stay at a range. Make sure you're kind of just sitting away from that. Let's take a look at this replay real quick of that fight. And this is where we take a look at St. Ghoul, Morn. Like literally everyone, like look how close all like the first 3 are at. ZRX and Ronin, of course, are away, but it doesn't really matter because your front line gets like snapped.
Yep.
You know, like Thanos. It's not a tough sight to
jump back to live as Hyper diving underneath the turret against 3, pulled back in by the Showstopper. Has shield coming in, Lantern to be able to pull away with the turret connecting, but only getting a little bit of damage. Hyper somehow being able to escape from that fight with Disconnect ShamWow on the flanks just in case that Vipers were able to re-engage that one with DRX somehow dying on the sidelines. This is just painful to watch for the Vipers.
I mean, I think at this point, Alex, I just want to see ISU kind of close it out as a unit. That's probably the biggest thing you want to see when it comes to their improvement, right? Because they've already expressed that, like, you know, when it comes to teams that are below them, it's like a really, really clean finish. Like, really, like, it's very fast and, like, you can understand why they win. But then when it comes to the losses, it's like, oh, like, ISU hard loses because of the way they play. And that's something that I want to see if ISU can execute this game. And if I'm them, that's what I would do, right? Just make sure you can use this as practice time to see if we can close out the game cleanly, or maybe look to set up potential plays of what we can execute against better teams, right? That's what I would be doing if I'm ISU. Not looking for these kind of solo kills as what Drew Dozer is doing, you know?
I was just about to say, you mean like that?
That's not team play. That's just Drew Dozer kind of proclaiming that he is the better mid laner, a better solo laner in this sense, in this top side, you know?
Yeah, when you're 5-0-5, I feel like you have a lot of room to work with. As Nazca landing another hook, this time on a Morn. He's almost the same level as Morn as support, so ShamWow easily is able to strike him down. Barrel's not going to be able to connect onto St. Ghoul. Instead, they're going to turn their attention onto the objective, which is the Baron. Since Morn's dead,
Drew,
of course they're going to go for it.
Go to Baron. I was gonna say, man, Drew, like Drew, don't be trying to fight a 1-on-2. Drew, go to Baron.
Drew, what you
Baron.
doing? Natsuko,
Do
Drew,
Baron.
what you
Drew,
doing?
don't-
Oh, he's
stop.
just gonna. Is he gonna just?
I
Kill
know
him?
you.
He doesn't have
I know
shockwave.
you want to. I know you want to flex on him. Drew, just go to Baron.
Diesel's
you know,
up.
And then let's make sure you guys get a team-wide reset. Okay. And
Natsuko's still here
Drew's
with
actually.
Bulldozer. Oh my
He's
god,
actually
that
trying.
damage.
He actually wants to fight, man.
Yeah, he was able to get the flash
yeah.
out of Diesel with that shockwave, and now that they have Baron, they already got the minions here. Dawning Shadow gonna get a little bit of damage onto Russian Ronin, but they're just gonna continue to harass. They're gonna be able to crack down that turret, and I don't know, you know, it just dead. Turret was able to finish that off, but that's just BM from that point from Drew Dozer. He knew
Come
he
on,
got
Drew.
the kill.
If I was his coach, I'd be like, just get the
Hyper,
Baron. Get
what
the
is
reset.
Hyper doing?
Hyper!
Look how low Hyper
What are
just
y'all
gave a shutdown.
doing?
They're just giving over gold at
You
this
guys
point.
are
They have such a
actually-
lead that Natsuka's gonna die. It's a double kill for DRX. They've lost the Baron onto 3 members, but that damage in from Disconnector, that's 3 members so low. Flashed in, flash coming in from
Disconnector?
Morn, and he was taking the turret the entire time.
ISU. Can we just end the game cleanly?
Oh my god!
Okay, Shamwa, I know that your barrel doesn't.
He's gonna 1v4 right now. He's gonna 1v4. You got the barrel? Gonna be able to get the
Okay.
double kill?
Oh,
Hey,
God.
Diesel, what you gonna do?
Oh,
Parlay, baby! Triple kill!
God. Guys,
And look who's
Oh,
here!
God.
Hey,
Now
guess
Drew
who died at the
Dozer too.
beginning of that? That was
Honestly-
Drew Dozer. ShamWow finally
Okay.
died, so the shutdown, all that damage, all that effort to be able to kill ShamWow. Drew Dozer is gonna chase down Russian Run and get rid of him from the fight. I don't think anyone has Baron now on
No.
ISU. I think everyone
Yeah,
has now
you know,
lost it
yeah.
after they
you know
had that play.
Alex, you know what the
Yes,
sad
Will?
thing is? Like, this doesn't change the game state.
Not at all. Not one damn bit.
That's why it's annoying, right? It's like if it was like a game-changing fight and Striking Vipers can come back in, that's great. But the thing is that it doesn't change at all because you take a look at the top of the screen, ladies and gentlemen, and
Top of the screen.
non-binaries,
Look at
it's-
the items, Will.
Look at it doesn't look at everything, bro. ISU they can give 20 more kills and maybe the game state is back to even. ISU's just they're just having fun at this point, bro.
Yes, they are. They 100% are. This looks like my solo queue games whenever I know that my team's won, and I'm trying to see if I can get the minions to kill the Nexus because I don't want to end.
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of
is
games
great.
right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
he did. Okay. I
We are-
thought
we
for
are-
a second
yeah.
that Natsuka stole that with the hook.
Jokes on you guys. I'm actually playing mid lane. I'm actually Drew Dozer. Rafa's hyper on Hecker Room. We have return top lane. We're just in this game playing as ISU, and because we're casters, of course we're gonna win every game like this. So
Yeah, because we're the
just having
best.
fun.
We're really good
Yeah.
at this game.
Yeah. Alex is obviously disconnector in the 80 character.
Yeah, I'm
you know.
super good. I'm super good at this game. It's now more played back in. Use Scourge rank of Dawning Shadows, killed off by Hyper, even with the showstopper. Look at the damage that comes in. They're trying to use the Emperor's Divide, but the shield coming in from Hyper to be able to keep him alive as Ghoul is taken down by the auto attack out of Drew Dozer. Hook going to be able to land on the Diesel. Not going to be able to follow it up. Instead, it's going to be the bullet time with Golden going in for Drew Dozer to stay alive. Uses the lantern again. Another hook. Shockwave takes him down. Diesel's gone. Make it a third. They're looking for Russian Ronin. They've got the ace, and that is going to be game 1 for ISU.
Alex, I did not know we were playing Stardew Valley because all ISU was doing was farming gold and making recipes and going to sleep for just a little bit on a reset and coming back and doing the same exact thing. If this was their farm, this is a damn successful farm because that's what ISU is basically doing against Striking Vipers.
This game's so early
Yeah.
in the game still that Morn and St. Ghoul are able to spawn back up into the fight.
They're not.
Look
They
to
can't
see
do
if they can
anything.
continue.
I mean, look at
they
them,
might
bro.
die. Russian Ronin and
No,
the crew
no.
are going to be able to get up as well. St. Ghoul has to use the shield and the flash to try to see if he can survive as Morn was able to chase down one, but he's going to be killed off as well, even with the Gorge Drink getting him a lot of health. There's still one more in for Hyper. Nexus turrets are still up. Nexus turrets are still going. 4 members here, not getting the play. Back into the back line they go. Disconnect, take down 1, take down 2, look for 3, looking for 4, baby. They got it all that they need to. They're just flexing on their opponents. Double kill for Hyper at the steps of the fountain. Finally, they're going to be able to get that inhibitor, the Nexus turret, and now they're going to be able to get game 1.
Clean up your plates, ladies and gentlemen. ISU. I swear to God, man, you guys are this good. I want to see it end cleanly. Y'all having fun, I understand. But if you guys are making complaints as to why you guys can't play against the top teams, this is a good game to kind of to practice those kind of things, Credit to them, they did take the victory in a very clean way. I won't say clean into the early game.
Yeah.
clean in the early stages. At the end stages, they were just kind of like they were kind of like a little kid who got a really good burger, and they were like, oh man, I'm gonna eat like the first half. They really want to eat it all up, and then they realize, oh wait, there's a playground right there. I'm gonna go leave like half that burger there and go play. And then when us as parents, Alex, tell them to finish your dang food, they're like, nah, I still want to play though. It's like, no, just hurry up.
We're
Finish
telling
it
them
so
they
we-
gotta eat
so
their
we can play something
vegetables
else.
before they can go play some more
I
games.
don't care about veggies. Just finish it. Finish whatever's on the plate. That's all I care about, man. Y'all ate a lot of it, and y'all want to go play. Just please. I swear to God, in an Asian household, you get spanked if you did not finish your food.
Well, you know what? They were able to finish at the end of the day. They got game 1. It might have been a weird, wild west sort of finish, but they got game 1 over Striking Vipers. And so right now, we're going to toss it to a break, and when we come back, the desk is going to break down that game as best as they can, at least. So, guys, stick around.
More early game.
What you really, really want? I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I wanna, 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 really, really, really wanna zig a zig, zig a zig, zig a zig, zig a zig, zig a zig a zig, zig a zig, zig a zig, zig a zig a zig, zig a zig, zig a zig, zig a zig a zig, zig a zig a zig.
Welcome back, everybody, to the desk here, man. What a game we just saw here, gentlemen, between Striking Vipers and ISU Redbirds. It was one we definitely were not expecting, especially considering it started out off from draft where it looked so good for Striking Vipers beat.
Yeah, it looked fine in draft. They actually got a really good so basically they got Olaf into Hecarim, which is a good matchup to start with. They end up getting themselves winning lanes in top and bottom as well, with that Karma into Gangplank, with the Misfortune set into Senna Thresh. And it seemed like from the jump that things would go their way, especially because that early game invade at level 3 by ISU actually failed. So we, at least up until that point, we were all like, oh, okay, so it's a good start, Striking Vipers. Maybe they have this. And then, they didn't.
The rest of the game happened. Yeah.
The rest of the game happened.
Yeah, I love that they were playing around Karma, at least in the draft, right? They had a lot of great flexibility there. We got to see a little bit. Coming in, we were looking at this. We're like, okay, well, where is Karma going to be going? You have this set up for yourselves where you have priority in the bot lane for yourself. You have mid lane who can either contest or quickly make their waves over to a roam. And with Diesel playing into the Gangplank matchup, this should have been a fine setup for Striking Vipers to kind of just take over, make sure that Morn is empowered, and suddenly you have this situation where Hecarim does not have a winning lane to gank through. His bot lane is always under their turret, and it becomes very difficult for them to execute around team fights when you don't have gold to operate. But it just completely fell apart. And a lot of this came from, like you said, that early priority that their bot lane put in for ISU. They made sure to blow early summoners away from the Striking Vipers bot lane, which then meant we saw the invade. They go in, they get a couple of kills on the back end, but from there, it kind of just completely snowballs away from Striking Vipers. And we got up to almost 15,000 gold in favor of ISU, and they gave a few charity kills all the way back. Wouldn't be an ISU game without kind of making a flub in the mid game.
No, it would not. I find we would all be genuinely lost without it. But hey, that did give the opportunity for Shamba to actually get the highlight play of getting a triple kill. I almost thought it was going to be the Penta, but he eventually did have to get shut down, which is unfortunate for him, I gotta say. But past all that, Dimitri, I'll go here next with this one, because talking about it, especially considering that with the bot lane, which is meant to have their bot lane was not meant to fall behind it, considering their lanes, which is supposed to have consistent push prio too, right? They were not able to execute on that at all. So what do you want to streak for Striking Vipers going into the next game?
I mean, at this point right now, this is just a mechanics thing. This is simply like you need to be able to perform on fights. You need to be able to find ways. I saw glimpses on that, especially from their bot lane, where they were able to play around, hey, my team member is coming. We'll just wait 5 seconds. We'll give it a little bit of timing. We'll try to make as much space as possible for them to come in. But a lot of this is predicated around their mid laners. ZMT needs to be able to show up versus Drudozer, and ZMT just needs to kind of find his balance. Where is his foothold in this game? Does it mean that he has to play a different style? Does this mean we see him on something other than Azir? I don't know what that exactly entails for them, but Morn being their win condition is fine. But as everybody knows who's played jungle is very hard to play when you don't have a mid laner, or when the enemy mid laner is faker and he's just roaming over, he just comes over, hey, that's a nice scuttle camp, I'll take that away from you. Oh, you wanted your Raptors? Well, I'm just going to make sure that my way is pushed in and my jungler can go for the invade.
It is just so free.
Yeah, and I think another thing you need to do is if you're going to draft yourself a winning bot lane, don't blow your summoners at 2 minutes, because that's really bad. That's a pro tip from your boy Beatdown.
Yeah. Okay.
Summoners are good.
Yes, quite good.
Yes.
And priority, very good also. Highly recommend Striking Vipers. Look to acquire some. Jokes aside, though, again, it's like Dimitri said, there isn't a whole lot to say. You get a good draft, a better draft in our opinion, and you still can't perform on the Rift. That's just a fundamental problem that Striking Vipers are going to have to work through. I'm not sure they could draft themselves an easier composition unless, again, globals get thrown into the mix here. But outside of that, we just got to look at ZMT, like Dimitri said. Might need to see him on something other than the control mages. Has played the Irelia. Has all right performances in the past. Might be something they want to lean towards, because at the end of the day, more needs a mid laner, man.
More needs a mid laner.
Speaking of which, as well, because I believe Dimitri, you said it too, right? You can play like You can play jungle without mid laner, or you can play mid lane. You said something real smart, which I wanted to highlight. 'Cause
You
it
can
sounded
play mid
cool.
lane without a jungle. It's gonna be hard because you can. It'll be free. You can get blue buff at level 6, 11 anytime you really want. It's great. It's fantastic. I know beatdowns like getting free blue buffs. I'll take it. Sure, give it to me.
Yeah.
But you cannot play jungle without a mid laner. It is so difficult for you to do. You can do it with your bot lane. You could try to do something, and I actually really love some of the wave manipulation we saw some from the Striking Vipers. They were really excellent when they were able to actually slow down the game for even a moment. But then we got right back into the chaotic pace where where ISU's bot lane was either looking for roams into the bot side or top lane just completely imploded. So.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. Morin, I think, did die a lot in that game, and I think had his own criticisms away from himself. But it really starts to stem from mid lane. When that starts to bleed, the rest of the map is kind of just washed at that point.
Yeah, because I mean, also considering Moore was going up against Drew Dozier too, which was a player that we wanted to highlight really quickly as well, because he absolutely crushed the entire matchup, and like you were saying as well, Dimitri, he like all across the board. Moore was not able to match his roams at all. His TP plays going down both top and bot, man. It was absolutely gross how well he did in that.
Drew Dozier was fantastic, and this is nothing less than what I expect from an old amateur talent. I don't want to say that age is a difference here, but his experience and the time that he spent here in amateur is really starting to show he's fantastic. He's basically, you don't have to worry that his fundamentals are just not there because he had excellent control of the mid lane. He was up in experience and gold versus his opponent, meaning that he was able to roam. The biggest part of where I think this game started to fall apart was he comes down to bot lane, level 6, TP is available for ZMT, but there's a wave crashing into him. He's not level 6. He doesn't have that ultimate. And at that point, the fight is completely lost for Striking Vipers. It's a numbers advantage, and Drew Dozier just makes the complete difference in there. So I want to tip my hat off to him, saying great job. You did a fantastic job on the Orianna, and I want to see more from him because a lot of these players, again, on ISU have had kind of glimpses of greatness, and I want to see that star burn brighter.
No, imagine we will. Don't know. B, final question for you here right now. Does or can even Striking Vipers come back from this in game 2?
No, I don't think so.
Good man. Deep down, he knows.
It sucks to say, it doesn't feel good to say, but after watching it, look, losing with the better draft is one thing that happens. Mistakes were made, but getting trashed with the better draft, rolled and smoked. This game's over.
Okay, I like it. Bringing the Overwatch through. Okay.
You notice that? Huh?
I don't know if we'll get any bans for that one.
No, I mean, it's I mean, they're not playing goats, but man, they truly are going it right now on the side of ISU. That was awful. So with that all being said, we're gonna go ahead and pass it off to our caster, Chilling Walk and Mad Magical. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Ravish and the desk. It was great to hear from you guys on that game, and hopefully the Vipers can figure out kind of the things that went wrong and what they can fix going into this game, but it's going to be difficult because ISU were so strong in that early stage of the game, and I know, Will, you're already like groaning about a lot of this. It's like, give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts. These are not thoughts, Will. Those are
Striking Vipers need to. I'm honestly at a lost words. I have no idea what Striking Vipers can do. Maybe honestly, at this point, just throw a wild card in there. Because like this is where I'm trying to make an argument on what Striking Vipers can do to improve, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can as a team. That's the issue I'm arriving at. It's like there's so many issues individually when it comes to just laning that isn't allowing you to get to team plays that you can set up for a squad when you're at an even position, you know? That's why I'm at a loss of words. Because
so I'll give you this though.
I don't know.
You know what? Fine. How about this? How about this is what I would like to see the Vipers do. I'd like to see them draft a far easier to execute composition as we get into the draft for game number 2. I felt like the composition they had drafted last time was just a bit too difficult for them to try to go into. They need to get stronger lanes. They need to be able to have lanes that can either hold their own, knowing that there's going to be a lot of pressure put by ISU, or get lanes that are going to be able to win. If they're able to do that, if they're able to clean up some of that, I feel like they actually might be, like, especially with how ISU can play kind of fast and loose and be a little bit disrespectful, that might give Vipers an avenue to be able to win.
But I'm not too sure though, Alex, because the first way they played was playing fast and aggressive against ISU, right? And ISU beat them to the punch. They won those punches, and so now Striking Vipers are not forced to change the game plan if they want to. And if they want to play scaling, we saw what happened in the laning phase between multiple members of top lane and bottom lane, that playing the scaling game isn't also the good choice, because ISU can orientate and change the game plan of them playing early game and then beating you because they have better early game champions. That's why for Striking Vipers, it's very hard for me to vouch a way for Striking Vipers to get value from this game outside of individual like practice. For team play, that's what I'm saying. Like for team play, what can you do to set yourselves up as a team if you're unable to hold your own individually? We saw what happened level 1 immediately from Disconnector and Nausicaa. Like they were already down a clown, they're already down a fight. They're not okay handshaking lanes. And same thing with Shamwell on the top lane. These guys are like, we're not handshaking anything from point 1, from the minute in, we're not handshaking the lanes.
That's
so
why
you have to hold
I'm
your own.
saying get easier to execute comps. I'm not saying get late game scaling comps. Easier to execute comps. Lanes that are a lot easier to go into. Try to get team fights front to back that are a lot easier to execute. I know, hell, there's a reason it's called Bronzodia. It's called that because it's easy to execute. Get yourself a Malphite, get yourself an Amumu, and whatever you need to do to make it a little bit easier on yourself.
Easier as a team, but that inhibits individual performance, right? That's like the.
You have clearly not played a Amumu.
That's the give and take, Alex. I have played a Mumu. It was when Sunfire was broken, and right now Mumu is not good.
Build them AP, my dude. You land one bandage shots, they're dead.
Now that supports the argument of me just saying Striking Vibe, just throw a damn wild card in the composition.
I mean, I'm not arguing with you on that one. I'm just saying, why not also make it easy for yourself?
Okay, fine. You know what? You're right. That argument is pretty logical. I'll give you that. All right.
Big brain here. I have the big brain.
You're also crazy, so to be crazy, you need to have a big brain. The question is like, is that part of crazy smart or that part of crazy like dumb? And for you, it's always like a coin flip when it comes to those kind of suggestions, you know? It's like,
hey! I'm the person who figured out that Omewrecker is the best item in the game to the point that it has 100% win rate and had to get removed.
Alex, I talked to Cage and the Rage, I talked to Ender, I talked to like all the old homies about you and spamming Omewrecker. We're all in agreement that Omewrecker is not a good item. So
no,
you're the only person who
out
of all the duos that you commentated with, just a heads up that no one has agreed with you.
Just because nobody has agreed with me does not mean that I'm not right.
All right. Until you find a commentator who's down to advocate for Omewrecker,
that'll never happen. Even I know that.
All right. Well, looking at the bans here, we do see ISU picking Zaya and Lilia for themselves, already setting themselves up for a composition to kite away and kite back. I did learn a little bit about Zaya and how she operates in a lane. Unfortunately, if Striking Vipers plays a roaming support, Zaya isn't the best to kind of punish the AD carry by herself. So that is one of the weaknesses of ISU. But if you do set yourself up for a Rakan, you set up for a 2-on-2. So
cool. Okay, I just got something answered. So there we go. I saw Zaya banned and not.
Oh yeah.
It was meant to be Udyr. It was meant to be Udyr, not Zaya. Because I was like, wait, how did Zaya both banned and picked by ISU? So that would answer a lot of questions on that one. Sorry, it was just a little bug on our end. We were able to get that fixed, but we have Elise locked in for Morn, as well as Aurelia, which I'm expecting to actually be for DRX, since that has been one of the more played champions by the Striking Vipers mid laner.
But you're picking this blind.
Right.
It's big worry of picking this blind unless you're down to flex. And he's blind on blue side. So what ISU can do is just pick something that beats lane, that can solo, that can match lane, such as Pantheon, and win that matchup overall. Risky pick from the Striking Vipers on just showing the Aurelia early on.
Right, and that's the thing. This Pantheon, Drudozer has played Pantheon quite a lot. And also something to talk about is Dat and Gluten Free Panda are both stepping in here.
They are,
it's not going to be ShamWow, and it's not going to be hyper playing in this game. But this isn't something that is completely unusual. In fact, if I recall, last week they did. Let me just make sure. I just want to make sure of this before I state this. Where is it? Yeah, against Merc Esports, Dat and Gluten Free Panda played both games in that series. And that was in one of the games. Well, remember when I said that ISU were able to get an 18-minute and 46-second victory. That was with Dat and Gluten Free Panda.
Yeah, and I mean, if I'm ISU against Striking Vipers, yeah, of course, as a coaching staff, I would. If that game would happen, of course, I would give some game time to my subs. You know, I think it's a great time to just give them some of that game time. It's a good way of developing your entire roster overall. So I like what ISU is doing, giving some love to Dat and GFP. But, you know, back to this draft, I think Striking Vipers is heavily dependent on DRX making sure he survives the lane. For Morn, you know, we saw Elise, we just saw Elise and Recta being played just in Challengers Uprising, which it's a great success, by the way, from No Orc, from Viper and friends and all of that, because they were able to play the what Cuppy has coined the full court press, or the full topside press against their opponent, Evil Genius's Prodigies. But we take a look at Striking Vipers.
Oh, come on.
You
do not do this to me, ISU.
Right,
you do not hover this and not lock this in.
They're not going to pick it.
You locked this in, goddammit.
They're not going to pick it. All right, well, Alex is going to be off the cast right now. My name is Willie Chilwell. It's going to be myself solo casting this, as Alex is pouting and going to be going to a corner, making sure he stops pouting.
I'm not happy.
I know you're not. I'm cool with this. All good. It's whatever. I see you moving your chair, Alex.
I'm trying to spin it all the way around and I knocked over my heater.
I see you still moving around.
Hold on, I gotta get my heater. I knocked it over.
Make sure you get back on the broadcast, sir.
I'm here. I'm still mad. I'm still mad. Even if Striking Vipers are, if they lock in. Okay, so what did I say, Will, that I wanted to see from Vipers? I wanted to see an easy to execute team composition, something that was gonna be a nice, normal, front to back style composition. This is not it. While I like it, I like this. Don't get me wrong. It's fun. Yeah. But if you want to be able to beat ISU, I feel like trying to go and play ISU's game is playing into them. It's giving them exactly what they want.
Yeah, this is a full 1-3-1 from Striking Vipers. They do have a solid team fight. Don't get me wrong. They definitely have a solid team fight. But it is definitely in the position of a 1-3-1 overall, because Kaiser can jump on to help out the side lanes. Irelia and Aatrox are the ones, if they're ahead, can duel in a 1 versus 2. Heck, Elise is also good in a 3-man position or shadowing the other person here. ISU, though, I'm surprised that they picked Shen. I know you are, but I'm mad. I'm not mad. I am kind of questioning the peculiar pick of the Shen in the 4th position.
That would have been cooler.
No, stop it. The reason why I'm questioning this pick is because you could have actually not picked your solo lane, because you don't need to reveal what your 2 solo lanes are going to be. Pick your support blend, because you have Xayah, who can manage the wave by herself, and then position yourself to beat the solo lanes. I would have liked that angle more from ISU.
I would have liked Zed.
Magical, we're on cast, man. You gotta stop pouting eventually, bro. Alex, you're so older than me. Is that the excuse? When I get to, I want to clarify. You're also older than me too by a couple of years.
Chat, how old do you think I am? How old do you think?
Alex does look young though. I'm being honest. When I first met him, I'm like, Alex, you look really young.
Everyone still thinks I'm young. People thought I was younger than Ender, and that's the thing that is always wild to me.
Yeah, actually, I always thought you guys were around the same age.
I got that a lot when me and Ender used to cast together a lot. Is that we were either the same age or he was the older of the two. Like now I get more facial hair. I'm starting to get like a little bit like oh, you're a little bit older than Ender, but not much. So going back into this composition, so I'll stop pouting. Fine, but we look at this and it's funny. The Striking Vipers composition is what I expected ISU's comp to be, and ISU's comp's what I expected Vipers comp
You're right.
to be.
Yeah.
It's completely opposite of what I wanted.
Very risky way of what Striking Vipers wants to do.
Right.
It's all dependent on Morn again, you know? Like, game 1, it was like that. Game 2 is the same exact thing. Because it's up to him if he can get Diesel and get DRX going. Because if he don't get both solo lanes off, like, Striking Vipers are not going to have a good time. Like, can they punish Drew Dozer from trying to flex on DRX? Can they pin down Dat, who's in a sack top lane? You know, these are the solutions of, these are the problems Striking Vipers have to solve when it comes to this gigantic math problem.
Also, something I like that you don't see too often is if Dat and Drew Dozer are on point with calling out when to use your ults, Dat can channel his ult onto Drew Dozer first, and then as Grand Starfall goes, you follow it up, and immediately you have a Shen on top of you as well, so it's both of them showing up instantaneously, and you're like, oh Jesus, this is not what we want.
Yeah, that's one thing when it comes to Illinois State being ahead. They could just double down on the 2 globals that can, you know, punish Striking Vipers, especially in a 1-3-1-2. Because remember, Pantheon can just jump to a side lane or just get the lane pushing, move, and then jump onto another lane. Another thing too that is worrisome for Striking Vipers is that if they're not ahead, and if they don't get the flanks off, this is the most important part. If they don't get the flanks off, they're now playing into Disconnector and into Feathers, and we've seen what happens when teams are walking into Isaiah. She gets a gigantic feather recall, snares everyone, does a lot of damage, and now you have to walk away from that fight. You're 100% correct that Striking Vipers are playing the harder to execute composition when it relative to ISU and theirs.
Right. And hell, you know what? More power to Vipers if they're able to make this work. Everyone knows I like underdogs. I'm always an underdog fan. I want teams that people always discount. I want to see them succeed. But this is going to be a very tall mountain that they now have to climb, and they were the ones who put themselves in this position without any climbing gear. It is going to be very difficult for them to try to scale this and try to see if they can out-rotate, out-punish, and really just out-skirmish ISU, who I doubt are going to stop just because they have a slightly different composition. ISU still are going to look for the same kind of playstyle they've looked like they've always want to play with. ShamWow and Hyper might have recently joined over for ISU, but Gluten Free Panda and Dat have been with the squad for quite some time. This is not a unique style to them. They still play the same style, even if it's different players.
And along with that too, the reason why me and Alex are just harping on Striking Vipers is mainly because of the early game. Right? I think if we were to look at this composition and the way it's designed against another team in like the Proving Ground circuit, I think Alex and I can effectively make arguments on how Striking Vipers can find the lead. The issue is that from game 1 going to game 2, it wasn't looking too hot at all. No. When it comes to just individual performances, that's one thing I want to stress.
Same here.
When we look at Striking Vipers and when we look at the way they want to execute is the individual performance in lane, and along with that, the way they want to approach themselves when it comes to these 2v2s and how Morn impacts the early game. Those are the biggest questions we have to, Striking Vipers have to kind of answer for us, answer for themselves, answer for the community, answer for the rest of UPL.
They got to do that now that we've loaded up onto the Rift for game 2 of this best of 3. ISU up 1-0. Pretty fast game last time. Not their quickest of the season.
Hey,
but they definitely...
Offsides. Get back.
No. Stop that.
Get back.
Stop.
They went offsides, man. You had the line
No,
of
the
scrimmage,
hike had been called. The hike had been called.
The hike wasn't called, man.
I called it, damn it.
You're not the quarterback of this broadcast.
Wait, am I... What am I then? What are you?
Aha.
Are we just disembodied voices?
Okay.
Is
so...
I feel like we're just...
You're, according to our producer, Alex, you're the wide receiver. See, this is the hike. See this? They hike together. They go in together as a unit. You know, they're going for the jungle blitz.
Yeah, and this is just... And
I'm the
brutal.
free safety because I'm the smartest. That's right. I like that.
This is brutal because we were talking about how Morn has to get all this pressure early. It's all on how Striking Vipers are going to play, and the bot side of the map is completely gone.
This is where I don't know if Striking Vipers are acquainted to vertical jungling. So
yes,
ISU,
but the thing is, they haven't noticed it.
They haven't noticed it. Yeah.
The moment you even think that, you don't go to your Grump. You immediately book it to the red.
That's very true. That's very true. But if Morn does pick it up, it does create a situation of
That ain't
vertical
happening.
juggling.
He's going to
It
Wolves.
doesn't look like it is, unfortunately. So that means that Morn's gonna get a little bit ahead. This is
Dat
Dat flexing on Diesel, man.
Dat?
Like
Dat?
not respecting level 2.
All right, it's just
Yeah.
going in, and that's one thing that people always disrespect with Shen. Is if he's able to get that level 2 over you, sure, he's a tank, but those base damages are brutal. They can easily try to take over that lane. Bot lane seems like there is a bit of skirmishing going back and forth. Disconnector, he was able to use flash and heal to be able to survive, but they got a lot of damage back onto Russian Ronin. Ignite is ticking away. He's already used that heal himself. Not going to be able to get the pop that they needed to from Nausicaa. Instead, they're going to try to disengage. Wait a minute, underneath the turret.
All right.
Taking cool. Gonna be fine for now. Russian Ronin dodges away from the blade call. Trying to see if they can re-engage too. They're keeping this fight going.
Good
flash
stun.
in stun. Nausicaa so low. Zenith Blade is not gonna help out.
what?
It's still gonna be a kill somehow in the mid lane. As bot lane, we saw the kill finally happen. Returned by Disconnector, getting rid of Russian Ronin. Looks like Morn showed up mid lane, was able to get that kill onto Drudozer.
All right. You know what? Finally, we see Striking Vipers tackle the early game really well. Morn's also down here to say hi to Disconnector, but he'll be safe under the turret. But the biggest thing, what I was talking about, is Morn setting DRX up.
That's great.
For the handoff, and it worked out well. He traded the flash. GFP's here though. He could jump
Same
on.
with Nausicaa on the other side. DRX wants to be able to get this fight continuing.
You don't want
Drudozer might be able to get the buff that he needs to be able to get the stun. They want Morn. They see that there's that blue buff. They give it over to GFP. Even St. Cool nearby. Chase down, run back in. Has enough health. Was able to get the shield as well from the Ferromancy to be able to survive, get back to lane. But it is a long exchange of a fight between both sides that just doesn't seem to be stopping, because keep in mind, Dat was able to get a solo kill onto Diesel topside.
Yeah. All right, we're back to the chaotic early game and what happened in game 1. I'm down to it. Let's take a look at the replay of First Blood real quick. And this is the mid lane of Morn ganking Drudozer. Let's take a look.
Oh, nice. Okay. That was it was a nice duet to be able to set it up.
Yeah, he got flash stunned. He got stunned by DRX and then stunned by Morn, so that's basically what happened.
That's what I want to see.
That's
Good
what we want
stuff
to see,
out of
man.
DRX and Morn. Keep that up. Keep this pressure going. Use Elise's early game to get DRX in a position to carry this game. That is what you want. Sure, Diesel dying solo to Dat, not the greatest thing. Looks like it might even happen again. Okay, Diesel, you have to realize, don't fight this. Just wait till you get some items. Later on, you're going to be able to beat him. It's a secret. It's a good secret. And we have a replay from an earlier skirmish, so we can check that out and see what happened. But you gotta learn. You can't beat Dat here.
Okay, so if this was a fighting game, basically what Dat did was he just wave dashed forward onto Diesel and then just activated.
How good are you at wave dashing, by the way?
I'm terrible at wave dashing. Don't ever ask me to wave dash in Melee. The Melee is the hardest fighting game, and I think everyone can agree.
But fun to watch.
The technicality is so hard, man.
I used to be able to wave dash somewhat, but it's so difficult, and you're gonna hate me because I'm an Ice Climbers player, but I do not wobble.
That's good. I respect that. I hate you if you were to wobble.
Wait, Ignite? DRX?
No, he's fine.
No. DRX, get out of here. Comet Spirit. Okay, just not gonna be able to get it. DRX,
back up. Back. Okay, he's fine.
Wait. Oh no, he's gonna die to the passive, isn't he?
Wait.
Oh my god, what is going on in this mid lane? Comet Spear. Oh, nope, doesn't go.
You know he.
Oh no! DRX, no!
Wait.
Oh no! He's just
No, he's fine. He's fine. Yeah, he's just asleep. Okay. I've never seen a mid lane trade 3 caster minions for his flash. Just want to put that out there, Alex. I've never seen that. So that's
never
cool.
in the history of Dota. We're just
never
gonna
in
go
the
with the other
history.
game.
Yeah.
Oh, more.
Never...
Okay, he was trying to repel because he wanted to be able to get that and see if he was going to be in range to steal that dragon. Unfortunately, not. So now that enough memes aside, we can go back to what happened mid lane. We even saw that Sand United was used. Might be a kill. No. DRX is going to be able to survive.
He'll be fine. This is still good though for Striking Vipers, because the more DRX is just unable to just not take these 1-on-1s against Drudozer, and Drudozer is unable to just kind of find kills, the mid lane, the better it's going to be, because an Aurelia that scales is going to be very good, knowing that she can pop off at 6 or pop off in any team fight and see if you can get the flank. So for the Striking Vipers, it's definitely a good change of pace when it comes to just individual performances, specifically from the mid lane, you know?
Exactly. And
Outside of
bigger
the
lead-
trading 3 CS for a flash, that's a no-no. But everything else was okay.
The thing is, it's like, does that actually hurt them? That's going to be the bigger thing, because
It's
right
gonna
now,
hurt, man.
DRX has a pretty sizable CS lead over Drudozer. So
Yeah,
you've
but
got a pretty decent lead already built up by this Aurelia.
You're right, Alex. But take a look. If you point your eyes to the right of the screen, you look at Drudozer. His flash is about to come up, and you go ahead and look at the back of DRX. His flash is down. So when that flash is up, ISU has a big opportunity to punish DRX here. Okay.
But the big thing for me is looking Morn. Look at that flash. So we got to go bot lane, though, because
Oh,
it looks
okay.
like Russian Ronin, good gank coming in from Drudozer. Once you get the Starfall, you know what you do. You go elsewhere.
It's a Skyfall. That's
No,
not
they changed it.
Sokka.
It's actually Grand Starfall now.
Is it Starfall?
Yes.
It's Grand Starfall.
Me,
All right,
big
well,
brain here, Will.
You're play-by-play. You got to know the names. He wants
Yeah,
to try to see if he
exactly.
can make something else too.
It
But,
used to
Zula's
be
okay.
Grand Skyfall.
I
and
like
now
Skyfall.
it's Grand Starfall. I had to
It's
remember that because
Skyfall.
when they changed it, I kept saying Grand
Ah.
Skyfall, and I'm like, oh, no, it's Starfall now.
It's Skyfall's
Yeah.
better. Change it
It's like
back, right?
Well, they got the his whole new identity with Mount Targon and stuff. It's like why it's Comet Spear, because it's supposed to be with the skies and stuff like that, and like the stars and
Yes.
whatnot. You know. Oh, wait a minute.
Yes.
You feel you just
GFP?
yeah, you're dead, and you just
Okay.
reached that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Hey, Striking Vipers, you take what you get. Another kill
Yeah.
over to DRX. This is good.
I mean, I'm down to get some venison. That's just kind of sitting there ready and waiting, you know?
Right. That's like I think this is good for the side of Striking Vipers. They've got another kill onto DRX.
Yeah.
If we could switch over to see how much gold they all have, I'd actually like to see what kind of lead DRX is working with, since he's got nearly double the CS of Drudozer at the moment. 2 kills over him as well. Yeah, look at that. 1,000 gold over
gold.
Drudozer for this Aurelia. The Pantheon's supposed to win in lane, and he is not doing that.
He ain't. He ain't. All just came off that early gank from Morn on the mid lane. So imagine if I just wish that if we played this game in game 1 and game 1 didn't happen, you know, be a lot more competitive for sure.
Though, keep in mind, something similar happened last time. We have the cocoon on Denostica, but
Whoa!
Flash comes in from GFP trying to see what they
Big
can
sleep.
get with 2 members asleep. One of them being Russian Ronin. He was able to
Goes
use the
down.
killer instinct to stay alive, but it's going to be the sacrifice of St. Ghoul to stay alive for the side of Striking Vipers, which means more river control to ISU.
Not only that, Alex, but also more plates for ISU too. As we already see Disconnector and Nautica step up. Always happy for some more gold. Russian Ronin,
He's
Yeah,
got more
very careful.
nearby. I think they're
He
trying to
does.
bait this in
Oh,
right now.
Wait,
from
wait,
Disconnector.
where
Scott?
we go?
Yeah, wait, we
I
gotta
wanna
go
see-
back bot lane, guys. We gotta
wait,
go
what
back
are
bot lane.
What are we doing?
What's going on?
Oh,
man.
hello. Well, we missed that.
Well, that was a one-for-one trade.
I thought he was
Featherstorm
gonna
blown
gank
as well.
mid, man. Come on.
Well, they
That
did.
sucked.
It's okay.
That
It
sucks.
happens.
No. Well, I want to see that die, but all right, I guess.
I mean, I can
I'm pouting.
reenact it
I'm
for you.
pouting now.
I'll do the radio style thing of reenacting.
you
for
guys,
you
don't.
He
see,
goes
you guys
in.
don't see me.
He
but I'm
he gets
pouting
hit
right
by
now.
Cocoon, and he uses Featherstorm. Watch Featherstorm. He pulls it back and gets a kill and dies. See, I could have told you that
Yeah.
without seeing the replay.
Oh, like, obviously, but like I would have liked to be in the moment, you know.
I mean,
It's
it
like you're
wasn't
giving
that
me.
exciting.
It's like you're telling me the next episode of WandaVision when I didn't even see it yet. It's not as good. Let me be in the moment.
Depends
Let
how
me
good your
immerse myself.
imagination is.
My imagination sucks, Alex. I think you
Well,
already know
there's
that.
the problem. Right now, Diesel, oof, bad trade against Datch out there, even with the Conqueror stack. This Shen continuing to win out in the top side, looking for more pressure, Honey Fruit to stay alive top side. But now we are about to have a fight possibly around that dragon that's about to spawn up
Yep.
here in a few seconds. Trying to see if they can force
Oh,
out DRX.
Nausica's trying to go.
Looking for the stun, looking for
Got
the
him.
taunt. They've got the shutdown they needed to on a DRX. St. Ghoul not in a good position, trying to get out of there alive. Should be shut down, even though Diesel was able to get the kill on the disconnector on the other side. They're going to be able to at least put more to sleep. Even in the repel, should die to the ignite. Drudozer takes him down, but it's going to be a trade coming in from Diesel.
Whoa,
Diesel continuing this. Look at that Russian Ronin right in the middle of them. Going to be able to take down at least GFP. Diesel still alive. Darkened Blade. Look at him go. He's popping off. Needs to be able to get one more. Drudozer against Diesel. Has the Infernal Chains. Not going to be able to get the Darkened Blade. It's going to be a little bit of damage traded back and forth. Each of them surviving, but man, that was close.
The biggest thing in that fight, Alex, is that Disconnector got assassinated by Diesel on the right side of the river right there, and that's honestly what changed the game overall. You're basically fighting a 4-on-4 because DRX fell down and Disconnector got blown up, and because you're all fighting and they're all melee. Look at that, look at GFP, look at Drudozer, look at Nausicaa. They're all gonna be up in Diesel's face. He's gonna smack all of them down. That's basically what happened. So him picking up Eclipse and picking some more Omnivamp is gonna be very good. Drudozer wants to answer in the mid lane though.
Yeah, he does not want to let these plates go down for free, but he's got to be careful. He was surrounded. Morn's going to be able to get the cocoon on Nausicaa. There's 3 members trying to see if they can surround. They have the stand united onto Nausicaa. Going to be able to get the taunt onto Diesel as well. Even with Eclipse, it's not looking like he's going to be able to survive. With that shield, it's going to be the shutdown for Gluten Free. Russian Ronin on the other side, though. He's not going to be able to get the flank he needed to. Morn's going to be able to at least trade 1-for-1 back. With DRX getting a lot of damage on Nausicaa, Russian Ronin wants to be able to get some for himself, but he just cannot get into the fight. Nausicaa has those to back him around and try to see if they can still put pressure around the dragon.
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly a really tough fight for Striking Vipers to even go for because we saw the Vanguard's edge from DRX to see if he can come through, but he was unable to weave in and out, and yes, he does take Nausicaa at the end here, but we didn't see the full extent of DRX succeeding in that fight overall.
Is this fight over, or
it's a stalemate? No, they're good. They piecing. They took the handshake. They traded.
I was wondering if they were gonna continue that fight.
No.
There's a TP mid lane for DRX. It seemed like Nausicaa, even though he was so low, was kind of hanging around for too long. So, well, I kind of want to start talking about some of these items that are being completed because Diesel went for Eclipse.
I'm just kidding.
You got Eclipse. We got Blade of the Ruin King for DRX, which is kind of like a typical. Usually skipping on the Mythic for now to be able to get that, but we're having more of these items completed on the side of Striking Vipers, despite the fact that they're down in gold.
I mean, it's honestly mainly due to the mid lane discrepancy of what happened, right? Like, take a look at numbers, Alex. I see 30 CS ahead for DRX, and that means that Blade of the Ruin King, of course, is going to get picked up. Drudozer needs to get his Eclipse ASAP if he wants to fight, too. And the biggest thing is that top lane, from Diesel getting that triple kill in that mid lane fight, of course, is going to propel him with a gigantic golden flux with all that fighting going on. That of course, has to itemize for lane leg. That's why you see him with the play steel caps. I think we see a gank on the top lane, though.
Gank, putting someone to sleep. Diesel was able to heal up a lot with the help of the Darkened Blade, but that should be able to take him down and giving over the kill to Gluten Free Panda.
All right, finally, they stop Diesel's Reign of Terror on the top lane. Gets some space.
It's time for DRX's Reign of Terror instead. He might want to find this. Morn's not too far. Okay, no, he's not going to go for it. I was like, is he going to go for the Chad 1v2 play? No. Okay. I mean, bot lane, yes, but not really. It's going to probably be the turret given over to ISU as Morn. Still trying to put that pressure back onto Dat since he's so low. Especially with the Rift Herald, they know that they've lost the tier 1 top bot lane, so they have to get something else on the map. With Rift Herald there, it's an obvious choice, but I want to see what Vipers are going to be able to do with this. They have to be able to use it a little bit better than they did last time. Why are you there, St. Ghoul? You've got to realize that you don't have control of that bot lane. Just get out of there. Russian Ronin take a lot of damage. Featherstorm even used to just be able to get the root and kill onto St. Ghoul. That's going to be a lot of damage onto this tier 2 that just didn't need to happen if you were playing a little bit safer.
And no one's also answering the bottom side, but even before we get to that, Alex, there's still a fight on the top side.
Back. Drudozer tried to put up the shield to be able to survive. He's shut down by Diesel. Morn on the other side being able to survive, getting some of the honey fruit. 2v3, Gluten Free Panda and Dat. They have to be careful. They're leveled down to a DRX. Dat going to be able to taunt over the wall to try to see if he can survive and get away, but he's going to be at least rooted up by the cocoon, followed up, and finished off by the side of Striking Viper. So they'll answer on the top half of the map.
Yeah, Chain CC, man. Dat also had flash too. He could have flashed away from the flawless duet. He didn't opt into it, and he died because of it. I think if he just flashed away, he definitely would have been okay, and maybe they can contest. But yeah, very much a gigantic change here from the ISU squad. I think if Dat ran away, if they didn't want to take that fight, they did need to call Drew Dozer because right now Drew Dozer is kind of looking like the gigantic liability on the squad so far, Alex.
At the moment, you're right, but I gotta look towards the items being built by everyone. For the side of ISU, I mentioned before, the composition they were building seemed more what I wanted to see from the Striking Vipers. Something that was a little bit easier to execute, front the back kind of team comp that's going to work out. You have 2 tanks in both Dat and Nausicaa. You have frontline and Drew Dozer to be able to follow it up, as well as even GFP, who can follow up and get a lot of damage and put people to sleep. And it works. It works into Striking Vipers, because look at their composition. Diesel's gone for the lethality build onto Aatrox instead of trying to go for more of that bruiser fighter build that you sometimes see. It's going to be much more on a DRX to try to get through someone like Dat and Nausicaa, which probably is not going to happen too much if Drew Dozer is able to do his job, which is point, click, stun onto DRX.
I mean, that is the case, but the biggest thing is that for Striking Vipers, they need to find an opportunity.
point,
Before we
click.
get to that,
Drowsy, sleepy Russian, sleepy bot lane, they're dead, and that should be another tower taken by an overextension coming in from Russian Ronin and St. Ghoul.
yeah, and that I want to get to the point of Striking Vipers because right now in this game set, they can definitely look for 5-on-5s. They have the ability to take those because of the status of DRX and the status of Diesel. But right now, the 2 people we have to take a look at on Striking Vipers is Ronin and Ghoul, man. There's a big discrepancy on the bottom side, and more. You can't be here, bro.
You gotta
can't
bail
be
out
here,
of that
bro.
one. You might have gone golden, but it's just
You
delaying
wasted
the
your
inevitable. And now
stopwatch.
DRX, you're here, sure. St. Ghoul and Russian Ronin were able to respawn, but look how much you've lost in the meanwhile. That's going to be ISU immediately peeling off to get control of vision around the Baron that's going to spawn up in a minute and a half, and they're going to look to see if they can rinse and repeat more picks like that.
And this is all that individual mistakes that I was talking about earlier, Alex. Like, I think this game is for sure the biggest way of seeing Striking Vipers handle some of the early gameplay and handle some of the early lane matchups against ISU. But then this is where it gets to the tough part. Can y'all play as a team? Can y'all be together as a team? Ronin and Ghoul were overstepping a little bit in the mid lane. Morn was for sure not in the right place at the right time in the mid lane inner turret. And these individual losses will eat away at your mental. When you think you have a chance and you step yourself up, it beats you down because you know that you messed up on the team. And this is where Striking Vipers, even though they have the stats to fight, mentally, you already see them being very scared of walking up and trying contesting this mid lane as they get jumped on.
They have Stand United, they even have the shield, but look at St. Ghoul's Magnet Storm. It was able to pull back a lot, so they trade 1 for 1, and support that's gone. Look at DRX getting a little bit of damage. You gotta try to see if he can survive to be able to see Sleepy, but he's dead in the fight. Diesel's gonna be able to clean up for the team instead. GFP trying to be able to get away. They've been able to find the fight they need to. A good Dark Blade, but it was a good blast going over the wall coming in from GFP. Cocoon not going to be able to connect onto Lilia, who's going to be able to prance away. But Striking Vipers, they strike back, and they're going to be able to get this dragon.
It was all unfortunate because Disconnector did not use the Blade Storm as fast as he can when he got jumped on from St. Ghoul, man. St. Ghoul got in the back line, set up that field of magnetism, and then Disconnector was unable to kind of get out of there. He had a flash. He had a Blade Storm. He was unable to get the Feather Recall. DRX was able to get the Vanguard's Edge on the backline because of that engage. And finally, we see Striking Vipers get a winning fight 20 minutes in.
And this is what I was talking about. What I want to see from Drew Dozer is target DRX. He went for the jump
And it
initially
worked,
onto
yeah.
Diesel. That was what they wanted to focus on, and what happens with that? You immediately then have DRX getting so much damage into the back line. St. Ghoul, beautiful Magnet Storm to be able to draw in 4 members of ISU, and that alone I think is what won the fight, because after that they were able to follow up, like you said, the Vanguard's Edge. DRX dodging around the fight consistently, sure, eventually dying, but everyone else in ISU is already dead anyways. What does it matter?
Now I'm wondering if what Drew Dozer's job is now, because in that fight he was the one who started the fight overall with the point click stun. I think at this point just sit back and make sure that Disconnector is perfectly fine. Make sure that Gloom Free Panda is doing his thing. Those are your big 2 carries. If I'm Drew Dozer and I'm trying to see if I can help and support my teammates, let your 2 carries do their job, because Ronin, he's for sure out of the fight, but he was for sure out of the game before that fight even occurred. Ghoul as well, because he was sitting there 1-6 before that fight even started, and they managed to win because they get the engage off and you were unable to pin down DRX,
Right, and that's sometimes all that matters. And this is where Rel kind of falls into that similar categories of a champion like Oriana, where all that really matters is you can get that one really good ult. If you're able to land that, you're gonna be fine for the team. You saw the whole time that Russian Ronin and St. Ghoul were struggling. They were getting themselves caught out too far out, not positioning well. Well, one amazing fight works perfectly for them. And if St. Ghoul can replicate that again and again, there's very little that ISU is going to be able to do, especially with a blast cone like that for Nausicaa to just die. You're not getting out of that one.
Yeah, unfortunate, because I know what Nausicaa wanted to do, right? He wanted to move into the bottom quadrant to set himself up for potential dive of whoever's defending that top outer turret. Unfortunately, Striking Vipers were already ready for that defensive play, and they managed to catch Nausicaa on the rotation. So, good job on them. This is usually what we want to see from a defensive team, answering against a team that's stronger than them. And in any sort of game, it's the game of information. If you know what the enemy is going to do, and you set yourself up to beat against it, you're going to win that interaction 9 times out of 10.
Now we see game nearly dead even in gold here, 23 minutes in. This is a great change of pace for Striking Vipers, where we were kind of wondering how they're going to be able to play around with this team composition, and we said that if DRX is able to continue to have this lead, continue to be like the leading force, it's going to work out well. Diesel also, it's been right up there with them, been able to help out. The top half of the map for Striking Vipers has really been able to come together to get them this lead, and all Russian Ronin and St. Ghoul need to be able to do now, to be able to add into that, to get them this victory, is have St. Ghoul have those perfect ults, and Russian Ronin remaining on the outskirts, getting damage after damage into any of these tankier members.
And I want to call back to where, you know, it could be up to St. Ghoul to land a gigantic, like, ultimate, right? It definitely is a potential win condition for Striking Vipers. The issue is that right now, especially at this high level, is that, you know, teams don't really fall for that once you get it once. It's really hard for Striking Vipers to kind of replicate that fight again. So hopefully Striking Vipers recognize that they have to change the way they approach these fights now, because ISU, they are ready for that kind of fight to now occur.
ISU is trying to set up a little bit of vision control around this Baron, not relenting too much control of the map, despite the fact that a couple of these fights haven't gone exactly the way they would have liked them to. They want to see if they can instead slowly choke the life out of Striking Vipers. The problem with the composition for Vipers is that their comp is a lot more about that early upfront burst damage that they can provide. I mean, look at Diesel's build, going for that lethality Aatrox build as opposed to going for the bruiser one. Going up against someone like Dat, who has that Thornmail completed, already got the steel caps, already got the Sunfire Aegis, is going to be really difficult for Diesel to deal with, especially if he's able to get the taunt into the front line and be able to stand in front of any one of the members on the side of ISU.
He's definitely going to have to see if he can try and find those flanks, and again, it's going to be Striking Vipers' game plan to set themselves up for these kind of fights here. It's going to be on DRX. He has a gigantic lead over his mid lane counterpart in Drudozer, but this is a front-to-back team fight. They're looking to opt into it.
Hastan United, Grand Starfall, they were able to get a lot of damage. St. Ghoul not able to get the Magnet Storm as Diesel taken down, shut down by Disconnector with Drudozer into the backline, trying to keep DRX at bay. Woo! Can't do anything. It's triple kill coming in from Disconnector. Morn, can he escape? There are no chickens to be able to run to. He had to flash over the wall to try to see if he could survive. Not going to have the World Seed, but without Morn on the right side of the map, it's DRX trying to get the Scuttle Crab. That should be the Baron for ISU.
Yeah, it's only going to be on DRX, and honestly, credits for Drudozer for stalling DRX and stalling Ronin from approaching that fight. It separated Diesel from the rest of the crew, and he was basically fighting a 1 versus 4. And when you fight against not even numbers, you're going to lose that no matter what. Credits to ISU, man. Credits to Drudozer, because, you know, I was saying that Drudozer, maybe he should just be the person sitting on the backside and, you know, making sure that he stops DRX or Diesel from going into the back line. In this instance, if you're able to sacrifice your own for 2 people or stall 2 people away, it's a really good thing that you can pull off.
And not to mention, he didn't even die in the fight. He was able to survive through the whole thing. Steric's Gauge now completed too. Going to be that much more difficult to actually kill when jumping into the backline. You can see the grievous wounds coming in from so many of these members to add in to this. We already mentioned the grievous wounds from that Thornmail, but then Oblivion Orb completed by GFP. You have the Executioner's Calling coming in from Drudozer. A lot is just starting to go where ISU have the right items, they have the right playbook that they now want to be able to follow, that Striking Vipers, they gotta reformulate what the game plan is.
And to formulate that, Alex, this is where Striking Vipers is going to be playing one of the hardest compositions to pilot, and it's that 1-3-1. And 1-3-1 requires the most out of communication from side lanes and the most communication from your 3-man unit. on when it comes to who's moving what, who's moving where, what chess pieces are going across the board from the map at all. And that's where I'm a little bit worried about Striking Vipers executing this 1-3-1 to perfection. Yes, it's a lot easier to pull a 5-on-5 teamfight composition, but Striking Vipers opted into this. They wanted to go for this 1-3-1, and we'll just have to wait and see if they can actually execute on this kind of strategy.
Especially going into the Baron buff that ISU have for themselves. They're seeing if they can just set it up and slowly push back in. They have that team fight composition that works well. We saw what happens when they're able to have a full-on front-to-back fight like they wanted to. Disconnector was able to go on a rampage, having now 3 completed items onto the Saya. Already difficult enough to kill, and the reason why you picked Saya is for these late-game fights. The crit that you can get. Drudoser just dies in a 1v1 against DRX. I don't know why you're actually trying to fight that. You needed to be able to stay with the team. This could put everyone in a bad position. Magnet Storm into the backline. Disconnector had to stand united. Tether Storm used as well. Tried to flash over the wall, getting a lot of damage onto Russian Run, but he's going to be executed in the fight with Diesel, getting a lot of damage onto Dat. Trying to see what else they can get. Nazca is fighting with Morn. Same with GFP. Dat still barely alive. World Seed not going to be able to connect. And it, as far as I can see, is an even 2-for-2 fight.
It was 2-for-2, but again, man, Disconnector getting caught out from the engage St. Ghoul. He had the Feather Storm ready and waiting, but then he gets snared up and he takes a lot of damage up front. At that point, it doesn't matter if you use it or not, right, Alex? Because you mainly want to use it to make sure you get out of the range and get out of the Magnet Storm from St. Ghoul. Fortune gets caught out, and that gives the Striking Vipers a window of opportunity.
It does. This is where they can start getting more on the map. As you can already see, GRX pretty much clearing out the jungle, trying to make sure they can get this influx of gold into their pockets. They're able to deny that Baron push that would have normally come in from ISU, delaying the inevitable. And to think that was a fairly even fight for ISU at a 4v5 since Judozer died in the 1v1 to DRX.
Yes.
Having that be that close shows you that ISU have that much control over the map. They got to play a lot safer. But for Striking Vipers, if they can continue to find Judozer out like that, find these little skirmishes or these picks, that gives them an advantage to be able to win. Unless, of course, Morn himself gets caught out, repels to the minions to be able to get out of there. Nice pull by St. Ghoul to save the jungler.
Yeah, but the biggest thing for Striking Vipers, and you brought this up too, is finding Drudozer. This is where we fulfill the 1-3-1 criteria, where DRX has to beat his lane opponent, and it's going to be Drudozer. Diesel has to beat against his lane opponent, which is going to be Dat. And that's the biggest thing of executing the 1-3-1 is that your side lanes need to draw pressure from ISU and their 3-man unit from the mid lane, so that it becomes a gigantic seesaw of motion across the map itself. And it's usually how 1-3-1s work out. But again, 1-3-1 is one of the hardest compositions to pull off because you require everyone needs to be on the same page of how the map is moving. And most of the time, when it's a 1-3-1, you're usually just looking at the map once you clear a wave and you're progressing forward. So hopefully Striking Vipers can execute this. They do have the dragon lead for themselves, and that's why we see it being set up 45 seconds left for this to spawn. But this does opt into a 5-on-5 team fight. And at this point, you have to find those flanks.
Gotta find the flanks. You gotta get DRX in a position to be able to carry for the team. Having already Flame Horizon, Drudozer, already having such a massive amount of gold into his pocket as well with the Triforce Blade of the Rune King, Steric's Gauge to be able to survive even longer in these backline fights. You really need to make sure that you're being careful, you're being cautious. They're trying to push up mid, but with two connected, being in the bot lane as well, DRX, you see St. Ghoul trying to go for the engage, but it's a little bit too early.
Good.
Everyone was put asleep. Diesel taking so much damage. Russian Drone wanted to be able to go in with a killer instinct, but it's going to die to it. And you can see DRX trying to get away from it with Morn. They've lost 3 members. They've lost the dragon, and they know that the fight just cannot happen without them.
I did not know if Gloomfruit Panda has some lullaby set up in his household, but he put the backline asleep, Alex. And that was basically what won him the fight. Striking Vipers needed to disengage, but then because they were already jumped on, they opted into it. And I don't know if we ever replayed that, but then if we do, we're going to see how long the backline was asleep for, man. It was definitely a long one.
Exactly, especially since they were so far away, and how sleep works, you know, if nobody's attacking them, nobody does anything. They're gonna stay CC the entire time. DRX and Russian Ronin, the ones that really are going to have the most upfront damage, or at least the most damage that you're going to be able to get in a true team fight like that. If Diesel was able to get into the backline to try to survive and try to do his best, but that was it. It was the lethality Aatrox.
Mm-hmm.
So when we take a look at this replay, you can see just how detrimental that sleep was.
Yeah, and just look at
Was
the
more.
fight that occurs from Ghoul and from Diesel. They go in, but look at Ronan, look at Morn. They were just
Wow.
sitting there, and by the time that happens, you know, Diesel's already fallen down. Ronan jumps in way too late. Ghoul's already fallen down too. It's basically a 3 versus 4, 3 versus 5. But we have another
we
fight
already
on
got a
Baron.
fight, and look at that, Diesel's already dead. Even though DRX wanted to be able to get into the back line, he's just locked down for days and a half, and he's gonna die. More can't
If
do
he's
anything
still
to
alive.
Gluten Free Panda. That should be the ace secured by
Oh.
ISU, and that should be the game and series.
Remember, Alex, I was talking about flanks, and from the beginning of that fight, it was not a flank at all. We saw everyone trying to go on to Disconnector, but no one was behind them. We saw them get split off in that fight. 2 of them focusing on Gluten Free Panda, which is not the goal of the fight overall. The biggest person you have to eliminate in these fights is Disconnector, and because they couldn't do that, ISU, they win the game 32 minutes in.
32 minutes, they find the fight they needed to. A couple of good ones right before them as well. They realized how to change the game book, change the plays, change their style to be able to get game 2, secure the 2-0 after a rough early game. They might want to pad the KDAs a little bit more as they immediately eviscerate Russian Ronin and take the series.
All right, Alex, I actually want to take a step back and appreciate something the Striking Vipers did do right. Right? They held their footing in the early game. They punished Drudozer a good amount. I mean, we saw the gigantic mid lane gap that occurred later on in that game. But the things that they need to work on, right? Setting themselves up for 1-3-1. When you're playing in 1-3-1, you want to enter team fights, setting yourselves up for flanks. Majority of those times, you're fighting a front-to-back team fight, and when those fights were won, is because you were able to get in range of Disconnector to just kind of power through. You know, that's the biggest thing that's the biggest thing I think Striking Vipers needs to evaluate when it comes to this game too. Because game one, it was basically just individual mistakes left and right. But in this game too, when it comes to team play, what's the biggest things, guys, that they have to pay attention for when it comes to executing against ISU and their 5-on-5 composition that is designed to kite away.
Exactly. And it was a rough game for Striking Vipers. It seemed like they might have had some avenues to be able to find that game, to be able to pick up the victory, but they just weren't able to close it out. They struggled to be able to get into the back line, to get DRX into that position to be able to carry for the team. And honestly, it comes a lot down to what ISU were able to do using Drudozer to keep, Drudozer or even Nausicaa. We look at the last real big team fight before the explosive went to end the game, where they were able to get Morn and Russian Ronin asleep. Nausicaa was on top of DRX the entire time, so that Aurelia couldn't get into the back line.
Yeah, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I harp that a 1-3-1 is one of the hardest compositions to play. Like, you have to be able to execute that 1-3-1 so you're able to set yourselves up for flanks when neutral objectives show up. Majority of the time, when neutral objectives were up, they just opted into a front-to-back teamfight composition. Sure, some of those fights didn't win. Again, that's because Disconnector got caught out by Ghoul and was sitting in range of getting engaged on. But then when we take a look at how those fights turned out at the end, that gigantic sleep that hits a backline, oh, that's free, man. That means we can just take the fight and let the backline sleep because your front line is gonna die because y'all squishy, right? And that's where looking for ideal flanks is a part of side lane play. If you're unable to 1-3-1, you're unable to play side lanes, that means you're also unable to flank. So for Striking Vipers, if they want to execute this composition again in the future, those are the biggest things I want to harp on, and I want to see them succeed going in.
Same here. I want to see how they're going to be able to change things up for both squads. I want to see ISU be a little bit cleaner when it comes to some of their gameplay. I want to see Striking Vipers fix up some of their weaknesses because we can see that they actually have some strength, especially when they're able to get DRX onto an Aurelia, how they're able to play with Diesel onto which was interesting to see the lethality Aatrox. It just didn't end up working out that game. But there are shining lights for both teams. ISU, we know that they can get better. And for Striking Vipers, I feel like as long as they keep practicing, keep working as a team, there's a lot they can do to succeed later on.
And it's tough too, because I think another core part of 1-3-1, Alex, is the bottom side, especially Ronin on Kaisa. Like, he needs to be in a position where he can actually join in on the back line. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that in some of these fights. I really want to see Ronin go step up because everyone else on the squad of Striking Vipers did step up, right? Like, DRX was ahead. Diesel was like dominating some of these fights by himself, not gonna lie. And Morn, of course, was doing his job of accelerating his whole lanes, accelerating DRX specifically. But then for Ronin and for Ghoul, like in that isolated 2-on-2, they just looked so outclassed from Disconnector and Nausicaa, and that's something that individually they do have to look at too.
Yep, and you know what? That's something that they can work on and hopefully figure out what they're going to be able to do to change it. But for now, we're going to toss it to the desk, and they're going to break that series, that game, everything that happened down a little bit more. It was great casting with you, Will, as always. So, desk, take it away.
Thank you very much, Chilling Walking Mad Magical, for the absolutely fantastic cast here, y'all. Welcome back to Desk, everybody. We are beat down to Dimitri and Barry Toledo coming at you yet again. And this is a fun side that we just saw today. Now, I know many of us did expect the 2-1, but it did look quite back and forth. But let's not go into it just yet here. I'll go ahead and start off with you yet again. The draft this time, you give Strike Vipers some really solid picks.
Yeah, and I mean, for the second time on the night, they get themselves a pretty solid draft. I think the only real question mark might be the Elise pick. Like, I think it was a good matchup in general, but Dimitri, you were just saying it before we went live right now. Elise is the champ who has a timer. And at the end of the day, with Morn being the best player on the team, you need something that he can carry with. And early mid-game champions aren't exactly going to do anything close to that, because you could see how Morn had a lot of influence in that early game, in that mid game, and then it got to a point where Repel was used exclusively so Morn wouldn't instantly die, and 40% of the time he still did.
Yeah, and I want to kind of bring up that I think Striking Vipers actually did a perfectly okay job for what they had been given to them in terms of the tools. Both games now, they were able to find really early objectives, both in Dragon and getting now double Rift Herald in this game, because ISU just took really greedy recalls, or they actually wouldn't back in time. So by the time that they had already killed Striking Vipers, they were first out onto the map, and ISU kind of just had to give up objectives in trade of kills. Not always the most worth, and I think that given a little bit of tweaking, I think the Striking Vipers team, with those kinds of objectives, objective taking power, they can translate that into realistic gold value that'll actually boost them back into the game. And this time around, the top lane matchup was a little bit better. I think that despite the solo kill, Diesel did fine for what he had in front of him. Disconnector, being the main pin for this ISU team, fell very, very frequently, especially earlier on in the game. I think Morn, given what he was given the Elise, did very well. I'm looking at what exactly happens when you have a functioning mid-jungle 2v2, because Elise and Aurelia are super, super potent between the two of them. And we saw inside of the game that ZMT has so much gold. He's incredibly far ahead of Drew Dozer. He has basically 1,000 gold lead at about 15 minutes. Where does that go? Why do we not see Aurelia moving into topside to shut down the Shen, move down into bot lane, play around Jorel? Because that champion was basically the entire reason that we saw the entirety of Striking Vipers have just a chance versus ISU.
Yeah, because speaking of that rel as well, like you mentioned, like Striking Vipers, when it came down to the mid-game team fights, it seemed like they had all under control, because they would hop on in, rel will ult, and then ISU would ultimately die by the end of it. So ISU decides, here's what we do. Let's slow down the pace of the game, try to take less unnecessary team fights. Of course, they didn't take many, a fair amount, honestly. But once things got rolling, getting into it, it seemed like the Rel was either hopping in without her team or was being taken out first. Now with that too, falling afterwards was the Rel falling, along with the Aatrox falling, which were the main reasons why Striking Vipers were able to actually come back into the game. And then the rest of them just tumbled down one after another. So it was an unfortunate sight. It took a lot longer than game one. I felt like this was a game the Striking Vipers could have actually came back in on if they just executed it.
You were hard flexing. You're like, oh, I'm going to get my 2-1 prediction like I said. Look at
Yeah, he was. He's like, oh, man, it's just what a burden this big brain was. Oh, he was talking that ish. I'll tell you right now.
And then
let's be honest here, gentlemen. Look, if the Rel goes in with her teams and if they team fight, they win. Yay or nay?
You know what? I really do have to give you that point, because at the end of the day, with the composition that ISU had, starting fights was really difficult because they didn't actually have an answer for Rel, because every fight that the Striking Vipers took, they won. Because at the end of the day, Attract, Repel, Pheromancy, like Rel is a great champion, in case anybody wasn't sure, and there was just nothing. There was no champion, there was no ability response available to ISU. So, but the problem is, Striking Vipers, they just stopped starting team fights. They weren't really interested in fighting anymore. They had vision set up more often than not. They knew where ISU was, but at the end of the day, their indecision, their being docile, just allowed it. It just made it so easy for Hyper to find those swirl seeds and get those miracle sleeps. And honestly, it seems amazing, but when you get to throw a million E's in the span of like 5 minutes, you're eventually going to get a good one.
Yeah, and realistically, like you were saying, you're waiting on the Leon engage. I think the biggest part about this was whether or not GFP. There is no Hyper in this game. It's very hard for Hyper to land anything if he's not inside the game. It was dead and
oh, that's right. That's right. Sorry. This up. You're right.
It's super hard for him to go in, right? Like you're really squishy Lilia against Elise, Rel, all of these champions. Aurelia especially is going to hunt you down. Once we saw those sleeps start to come in 3, 4, 5-man ultimates, that's when we saw the team fight start to turn around, and that's when we saw ISU take control of the game. Outside of that, we saw that they were being competitive inside versus ISU, but Striking Vipers fall yet again, and maybe not as expected, but ISU played it about as well as I think that is closer to where we see them typically for the series.
Yeah, considering now going into the next couple of weeks of matchups, we're almost just right past the halfway point here as well. So for Striking Vipers right now, if you are to look at the Dreams going to playoffs, it's they're unfortunately
I think it's doomed.
Yeah.
Like this was basically their they would have. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
So we got to confirm. Thank you to our producer. They are mathematically out of playoffs. They were basically at this point, like they not only needed to win this, but also play huge spoiler for the rest of their matches.
Yeah.
Sorry to say, from now on, at this point now, they're putting losses on people's records if they're able to pick up wins. That is, I think, where they need to find a lot of comfort. And at that point, like you were saying, when we started up in this series, they're playing for experience, making sure that they get trustworthy, and just getting the reps in, because that is the most important thing for a team like this.
Well, let's hope they're going to build on that as well. Now, Beat, I'll come to you next because I don't want to say something. Just help us close this out here. What do you want to say? Speaking.
Well, I was just going to say, like, we should talk a little bit about ISU going forward as well. And even though they do get the 2-0 victory, there are still some concerns with them going forward too. Like Dimitri, you already highlighted how they have pretty bad reset timers, honestly, and they lost a lot of objectives to a team like Striking Vipers, who were last in the group, and stuff like that really shouldn't be happening. I think once you start facing the better teams in the conference, they aren't going to let you get away with stuff like that, and those are just going to be games you hard lose by 10 minutes. So there's a good chance they do make it into playoffs, but if they keep up this kind of play, unless they clean it up, I feel like they get knocked out first round.
Sure, I guess, but it depends on who they're facing. Because look across, they're sweeping a lot of their groups right now. It is, I don't know.
I think this is the weakest group. Like I think
sure. I think it's very hard for them unless they get paired with other top teams from across the bracket to basically knock them out and actually punish them. Like, yes, they're making mistakes, but who in this group is really able to actually punish them correctly and proactively? That is the biggest question for me. I don't think I agree that ISU has a lot of glaring weaknesses, and that's why they've started to really struggle in some of these other tier 2 tournaments. But for right now, I don't know if there's anybody other than the other top dogs in this group that can honestly take games away from ISU.
I mean, that'll remain to be said, like you mentioned before. Like Supernova, Supernova is definitely one that they have, but as you're going to work for production as well, they have GMU and Bay State left to go here. So, and the Windstorm past that as well. So ISU, I imagine, should be looking to make a clean sweep across this entire bracket. And
Bay State may I give them a little bit of trouble, but we'll see what happens when we get there.
Yeah.
Baby steps.
A definite possibility across the board for them. But with that all being said, gentlemen, I will go ahead and close this off. And thank you all for being here. Massive shout out to our casters again for being fantastic as always. Thank you, Beat, for joining me on the desk. And our guest, Dimitri Akbari Toledo, for keeping us energized. You will be able to see him more than tomorrow. So
he never says my name.
It's okay, Beat. I love you too.
We'll talk about it later, Beat down. But then again, our production crew, high protection, keeping us in check and making us look good as always. And you for watching. With that all being said, we will catch you all tomorrow right here at UPL. Peace.